the work, right? We have to be exact. Sort of what is the bare minimum that we need to know when it's current pricing to get started. I guess another theme for me around sort of sustainability that I've been hearing from my conversations is also resilience of supply chains, right? You have rising populism around the world, and countries are a lot more inward looking. And then you have shocks such as COVID, right? So this sort of just-in-time agile approach, which to date has been very effective when everything is open. And you can, for example, you can have, if you're a factory in, again, Indonesia, or let's say you have a factory in Meghalaya, right? You can fly in goods every single day. So the amount of inventory that you need to store, you can store in developed countries, you can store very little, right? But when you have a shock such as COVID and you can no longer do that, right? What do you do? So it's kind of that interplay between, just-in-time agile approach to now suddenly shifting towards, okay, we need to have stores in country. So I mean, yeah, again, this is very off the cuff. I'm just ad-libbing, given we have some free time. But yeah, I would say that there's sort of some emerging themes from sort of the more business perspective of COP26. But I mean, I guess maybe just to summarize it, I would sort of say, it is top of mind. It's being discussed in boardrooms around the world, and it's sort of there's the acknowledgement that it's the businesses that are most in front of this that are going to win, because it's sort of one of the biggest crises of our time, right? So, I mean, I guess that's sort of my 2 cents, as it were.
Thank you very much, Johannes. I guess now maybe Professor Getachew is probably ready.
Sorry, guys. I think I had a technical glitch. I couldn't hear anybody, and I think you are not hearing me as well. So where are we? So it's my turn to speak, right?
Yeah, you are the first speaker, and yeah, I have introduced you earlier. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, first off, because I'm having another hat as well as a UMD Media guy here, so we are live on UMD Media. So this Clubhouse panel is now broadcasted live on Facebook and YouTube. So the topic I was given is sustainable design, and I want to be very brief on that. I see design as a problem-solving exercise. I see it as a performance improvement exercise. And I see it as well in this context as an intervention development exercise. So what do we mean by sustainable in this case? So, I mean, I don't want to give you, a lot of definitions on that. I simply mean that environmentally benign, socially desirable, more than acceptable, and economically viable. So this is what I'm talking about when I say sustainable as an adjective to design. So for Tigray, I see Tigray as a design problem. So where I'm coming from is a systems approach, a holistic approach. I'm not looking at specific product here or specific service there. I'm looking at a holistic approach to Tigray as a design problem. There are elements that are hard in terms of hard features, hardwares of design when we look at Tigray as a design problem. And there are the soft part of the design as well. So obviously when we talk about the hard features, we are talking about products, services, infrastructure, you name it. But this, from the get-go, cannot be seen in isolation from the soft part of the design. The systems they are supposed to be embedded in, the structure, the policy, the curriculum, all that is a design problem. So I want to look at Tigray or sustainable Tigray in 3 ways. One is a Tigray that knows itself and its surroundings. What do I mean by that? So there should be first a starting layer, a basic starting layer, and that layer should be survival and security. And once you have that survival and security at the foundation, at the starting layer, then design comes to add on top of this foundational layer an environmentally net positive, socially empowering, and economically strong system, again made up of the hardwares and the soft part of the design. So what does it take to achieve that, or to have that in reality? So the first, for me, what decides everything is a comprehensive system of measuring and understanding the internal state of the nation, Tigray. So here, by measuring, I'm talking about what economic, socio-political, and environmental aspects do exist in Tigray. So understanding and measuring that would also imply not only about the internal state of the nation, but also about the external factors that would affect the state of the nation. That comprehensive understanding, that comprehensive measurement is what we can use for, again, measuring and understanding at a given time where it might, can, and should go. Without that, any solution, any design intervention would be suboptimal. Any design intervention would be problem shifting, just shifting in time, in space, in sector, and in geography. The second aspect is sustainable Tigray as a student of nature. In nature, there is a lot of things that we can learn. 3 aspects or more, 4 aspects that are very critical for sustainable Tigray are locality, diversity, interconnectedness, and circularity. All these 4 features are what we find in local ecosystems, from a very small ecosystem that you have under a rock to the microbiota we have in our stomach. We have all that feature of locality. You supply with local resources, diversity. If there is any shock in microbiota, for example, if there is any shock from antibiotic administration, then that diversity leverages on in terms of sustaining at least a significant part of the function that was before the administration of this antibiotic. Interconnectedness, again, this functional exchange. When part of that ecosystem dies, the other sustains that function, is there as well. The circularity, so it's not a linear, unsustainable flow of resources and energy, rather a circular one that sees products coming back and forth in second, third, fourth, and life. Last, sustainable Tigray should be based on vetted development, consciously vetted development. I'm talking about any intervention, design or otherwise. And again, I'm talking about design in a broader sense: policy design, curriculum design, structure, system, product, services, should be vetted based on the following criteria, in my view. local relevance, services and products. So instead of looking at product ownership, product production, all that, service delivery. A good example could be, instead of having everyone to own a car or expect that, and create a problem for socially problem, economic problem, and environmental problem, you just give the service of mobility. For example, comfortable, clean, affordable, not to say free, bus services, for example. So focusing on the service and products, low material intensive products, services, low life cycle impact or risk services. For example, some people, they advocate for using solar lantern or torch or these, small gadgets that are powered by solar. Do we ask the question of what will happen at the end of life? Is Tigray ready to end of life management of these otherwise carcinogenic components in these solar powered gadgets? This is the kind of questions that we should ask in terms of vetting what to include or not. Low energy intensive products and services, obviously 100% should be the goal for local raw material inputs and services and so on. But many community level distributed systems instead of few central big systems. We heard today the bombing of Tegaru Dam. This is a problem you get when you have big central systems that are susceptible for this kind of crazy targets and so on. So many community level distributed systems, that's also going with the diversity notion I mentioned. And above all, it should be participatory. The owners, the end users should be part and parcel of the decision making. My last point, safety valve. We have to have any sustainable community, including Tigray, should have a safety valve of looking at the vital signs of the health of the system, in this case Tigray, the social health, the economic health, and environmental health, and develop an early warning systems. Can you imagine if we were to have an early warning system that could foresee in advance what has unleashed on Tigray since November 4, 2020? We could have avoided lives, livelihoods, and what have you. So developing that and connecting it to what I said as the basic layer of survival and security, and building on whatever I said in terms of sustainable Tigray would be possible to implement. Thank you. I hope I didn't take much more than what I was planning. That's it.
Dr. Merle?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Getachew, for the very interesting talk. You have actually used 5 minutes less, so yeah, we have 5 minutes. Before I introduce the next presenter, maybe for the question and answer section, would have been nice to tell us about when we talk about the environmental aspect of sustainability, what is the scope? Are we talking about only locally in Tigray, or do we need to bother about the regional and global? It would have been nice if you could tell us about the scope. So the next presenter is.
So you want me to interject now, or
for the next section, for the discussion section?
Okay, thanks.
Or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, because I have 5 minutes, so I have the right to use that. Okay, yeah. Very good point. In my the measuring and understanding dimension, I mentioned the internal state of Tigray, but a very important aspect of that comprehensive monitoring would be the external factors. Needless to say, a very critical element of these external factors is climate change. So you can argue that it's also internal, but given the scale and the scope and the magnitude of climate change and who contributes what, I can safely put it as an important element of the external factors. And then, of course, there, the environmental, the social, the economic, external factors are as well there. So regional, national, as part of Ethiopia now, and then, the global. So there are many cases where we made, good traction, in different communities, only to be undone by external factors. So that's, a fact of life. So that's why the monitoring, the early warning system, the vital signs, all that should include both what's happening internally and externally. Any mitigation for that matter will also be depending on what could be done internally and externally. I see Professor Yakov commenting on live YouTube here. The cultural, the internal coherence of Tigray, very critical element. Actually, that's the most enabler that you can control, if you will. So that's very important. And I see Doug also commenting on the early warning systems live on YouTube that there was before the conflict started. So in a way, it was a little bit too late. But again, we can't afford not to have, this kind of early warning system that should actually be comprehensive enough to look at socio-political, internal, external, environmental, economic, because these things we are just simply classifying them into 3 tracks for the sake of simplicity. Otherwise, they are always interacting each other. There is a lot of trade-off. There is a lot of opportunity for synergy as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Haimanot Waldemikael. He's a postdoctoral research fellow at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. He's working on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we'll be talking about translation of Sustainable Development Goals. Dr. Tegaru, please go ahead.
Thank you, Malay. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you whoever introduced me to this, invited me to this session. So my current project is on how the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, are translated into planning and practice in urban Western Europe context. That's in Norway, and I study how municipalities and cities in Norway take in the SDG goals into their working frameworks, and in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, which the SDGs have 17 goals and 169 targets, and so many indicators that we are supposed to measure countries to use standard measures to compare countries, compare cities and municipalities against other cities and municipalities worldwide. So those goals are also an extension of the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals that ended in 2015. But the MDGs their focus was on the global south in the developing countries, and the focus was on addressing poverty-related basic challenge. Whereas the SDG is worldwide. It's a global agenda. It's worldwide. It also includes global north, urban Western Europe, Western world context as well. So as they also include the Western world or the developed world, they because of that, they are to a large degree vague. The goals are comprehensive and they are vague, and they are supposed to be shaped into the context where they are introduced into. So we have urban Western world, and then you have, I don't know, Congo, a village in Congo, which are supposed to follow the same kind of standard of measuring how they develop by 2030. So they include from, for example, zero poverty by 2030 to all kind of goals up to like cities and sustainable cities and communities and all that. And they also include all kind of goals, for example, from social, addressing social challenge to environmental and climate-related challenge. And they address the carbon emission and all kind of challenges that we face. So those goals are also based on the assumption that we have a normal world, a world where the only challenges are poverty, the challenges are related to normal anomalies in the system that we can fix, but they don't anticipate what may happen in terms of, for example, political disaster like we have now, or unanticipated natural disaster like pandemic that we encountered 2 years ago. In our case, for example, in Tigray, we have something that nobody has seen coming, and that has devastated the entire region's population and devastated the economy and everything that people depended on. So how do we talk about the SDGs in a context where even the most basic infrastructures, even the most basic social services are not there? How do we talk about translation of the SDGs into a context like this, disaster context? How do you introduce them to Syria? How do you introduce them to the context like Tigray? So then you need to understand what Tigray looks like at the moment. So you need to understand how far behind we are in terms of like achieving the SDGs by 2030, which is in 9 years. So we need to understand how Tigray looks like. For example, we have the entire agricultural sector, which many of our families, large portions of Tigray's population depends on, almost completely destroyed. The system that was built over the last 30 years has been reversed, and to a large degree reversed. And then, for example, according to the interim administration, the puppet administration that we had until June, to return to what it was, to return the agricultural sector to what it was like the pre-war period, like in November 2020, it requires up to 120 billion birr, which is roughly about $2.5 billion, which is an imaginable amount considering the resources in the region. And when you go to the health sector, for example, you also have similar devastation. When you go to the education sector, it has seen like really catastrophic kind of damage. The health sector, for example, from according to the humanitarian, according to their assessment, very rough assessment, of the 70% health facilities that were assessed, or 70% of the assessed health facilities have been destroyed, either partly destroyed, looted, or both.
I think we lost Dr. Teklaima.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'll just quickly reset the room for those of you. Can you hear me? Oh, wonderful. So for those of you that have joined us, today we are having an amazing session about rebuilding sustainable Tigray, hosted by UMD Media and TDRF. It's also giving Tuesdays So that means we have a wonderful program today. We'll have a Q&A much later on after our guest finish speaking, and then some entertainment and auction. So stay with us, and I'll just let Malay take over and introduce, he's back. So we will continue with Dr. Tegaru. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm back again. Something was wrong. Yeah, so the devastation in Tigray is it's catastrophic, and it goes for all sectors. Like, for example, industrial factories, industrial sector of the region, like 70 to 80% of the industries, the factories in Tigray have either been systematically looted or destroyed or both. So how do we talk about sustainability in this case? So we have to really rethink. We have to think differently from how it's introduced in other contexts. We have to think about that this is a region that is starting from zero. We have to consider that this region has lost everything, like the basic infrastructures. And in a context like this, we need to rethink the content of the targets that are set for the SDGs. So the assumption behind the SDGs is that there is already systems that are working, and the only thing that you need is to improve how they work. So, for example, there is a goal of setting, for example, zero poverty by 2030 in Norway, in a very developed country, but it's not. They still have like poor, what is defined as poor part of the population, but they have the mechanisms in place to deal with that. And in a context where almost the entire population of 7 million is poor, has become poor, you have to think differently from other countries. So what I think we need to do is to use the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, as a point of reference, as a sort of benchmark to look up to, but to work differently on Tigray itself. We have to think about to take the current crisis as an opportunity to start from zero. To start from zero means we have to do things differently. For example, addressing poverty doesn't necessarily mean that we have to invest in the same kind of things that we invested on before. Or addressing going for zero hunger doesn't necessarily mean that we have to only invest in sectors that the previous government invested on, or the previous administration invested on. We have to invest on sectors that have proven right in other countries, and we have that possibility because they have 7 million population, almost like entirely displaced, not necessarily displaced from their farms and homes, but displaced in terms of the way their production system has been destroyed. And we have all the factory workers, all the people that depended on factories now out of jobs. We have all kind of people that are out of jobs. So we have to think of different ways of engaging this population, getting this population back to work. So do we do that by investing in small-scale agriculture as we did before, or do we invest in what for example Effort was doing in Tigray, like investing in big mega industries which are limited in terms of geographical distribution? Do we devise a different system where we distribute possibilities for employment elsewhere, or do we just invest in similar kind of investments as we did before? So we have a possibility of thinking about that because we are starting from zero. But also a lot of the points that I was thinking to bring up here were presented by Getachew before me, who also presented, like, when we design the rebuilding of Tigray, we need to think about the context, the geopolitical, geographical context where we are. That war is, for example, almost an escapable situation we are in. We never know if this is the end of like our warring history, or if we will get more of this kind of situations that we face now. So development in Tigray has to take those kind of situations into consideration. But also, I share, I think, in Professor Jacob's point that we need sort of cultural transformation. It's not necessary that we move into really totally capitalist, liberal kind of economic system. We have to devise a system that considers, that takes into consideration the geopolitical position we are in. For example, every Tigrayan, from poor to rich, from like low income to millionaires and billionaires, now realize that it's necessary that the society has its own systems of coping with situations that we face. For example, I like just give an example. We have Abadi Afro. I think it's a rich guy in Mekelle, and another person just living in the neighborhood who earned working for as a daily laborer in a construction company. They both now face famine, like literally. Like the rich guy, if he hasn't by any chance withdrawn money from his bank account before the bank closed, he faces the same crisis as everyone else. Millionaires are facing the same crisis as everyone else. So this should put everyone into the realization that we are not going to succeed by just investing on individuals or by allowing individuals to get rich and the rest of society to stay in low income. So what that means is that we, for example, invest in a very decentralized ways of all our investments have to be in very decentralized system. We have to find this system that enables everyone to benefit from the system. We have to make sure that we have people. We don't have people who take everything away from the rest of the population, and so this also plays a lot into the goals that are set by the global multilateral organizations like the UN, where reducing inequality is taken as a goal. When it comes to other goals, we also have possibility to rethink about how we think about the relation between like the gender relations, like men and women. We now face. I mean, of course, Tigray has a history of men and women fighting together for equality, for securing rights, for protecting their people, but that hasn't the effect of that, the outcome of that struggle from the 1980s hasn't materialized, and women haven't benefited enough from the struggle, and now we have a time to reconsider that. So we have to think about all those possibilities that we have that come with the crisis that we face at the moment, to think about and to invest in a different way. Yeah, I think that's what I would say for now. And I would, like basically this is just to see if there are like points that we can discuss about, and we can bring up further, and we can have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haymanut.
And I'm sorry for like something happened. I don't know. In the middle.
So good technology.
Great. Should I just quickly reset?
Sure. Are you also? Is someone keeping time? Looks like Dr. Haymanut may have to donate extra cash to Giving Tuesday for consuming a little bit of more than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right, let me just quickly reset. Good evening for those of you in Europe. I think most of us are, maybe not the audience. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Today we have this wonderful session hosted by UMD Media and TDRF for Giving Tuesdays. We're discussing with our amazing guests how to rebuild a sustainable Tigray. So we will have Q&A. For those of you that are raising your hands, we're not ignoring them. We'll just have a session later on, so you can ask your questions. And then we will also have entertainment and auction. Obviously, we are raising funds for a TDRF fund. If you actually go on Twitter as well, give them a follow, and you'll get all the information that you need. I'll just pass on to Malay, introduce the next guest. Alenado, Malay.
To Tegaru, you have used your time efficiently. Our next speaker is Dr. Waini Tasalma. She's an active board member of Health Professionals Network for Tigray, and she will be speaking related to health and sustainability. Go ahead, Dr. Waini.
Oh, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Dr. Waini, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I will start with the status of the health sector in Tigray. I will go step by step to address the points that were given to me. Some of you may not know this, but Tigray actually had an exemplary health system, one of the best in the country. And there is plenty of evidence to show this. Let me mention a few indicators now. In 2019, 74% of the children of Tigray had received all of their vaccinations. The corresponding national figure coverage for Ethiopia was only 43%. Also, using child mortality rates as an indicator, neonatal, infant, under 5 mortality rates. Also, using child mortality rates as an indicator. This shows that more and more children born in Tigray had improved chance of survival. Another indicator is women's health. In 2019, 80% of women had access to skilled delivery. And as mothers in Tigray continue to have easy access to services, it results in continuous reduction of maternal mortality. There are many other indicators, positive indicators for tuberculosis, malaria, HIV, and other chronic diseases. But how about now? We all know war is an enemy of public health. Even in the types of war in which fighting groups take precautions to spare civilians and services, wars in which fighters obey international laws that govern humanity, even then, during any kind of war and conflict, available resources will be directed to support the war instead of maintaining social and economic needs of the society. The health system itself becomes among the first victims of war due to the reduction of resources. And at the same time, there will be an increased burden on the healthcare. Already established resources like hospital beds, medicines, emergency rooms, surgical services will be overloaded with casualties from the war. Also, quite often, civilians that are caught in a war zone suffer from a long-lasting physical as well as psychological trauma that needs medical attention. This causes further strain on the health system. The war on Tigray has all these consequences, but it's a lot worse. It's genocidal in nature. The Ethiopian and the Eritrean military and the Amhara militia committed massive atrocities, creating a wave of physical and emotional wounds across Tigray. At the same time, the Ethiopian military, Eritrean soldiers, and Amhara militia deliberately targeted the health system in Tigray. They intentionally destroyed most of it. Once exemplary, the health system in Tigray has now collapsed. Now, let me say a few words about that collapsed system. Back in February, Health Professionals Network for Tigray received needs assessment data from the Tigray Regional Health Bureau. That report helped us understand the status of the health services, the extent of the damage, and it gave us a clearer picture what the Tigray health services looked like before the war. So before the war, there were a total of 47 hospitals, 233 health centers, and close to 800 health posts in Tigray. But based on a survey from June, a recent study published in the British Medical Journal by Gussoso and their colleagues, they reported only 30% of surveyed hospitals, only 18 of the health centers, 18%, and none of the health posts are currently functional. You might have also heard reports of looted ambulances carrying looted staff across the border to Eritrea. Right now, there are only 31 functional ambulances in Tigray. 238 were destroyed or looted. Before the war, 269 ambulances provided services to about 250,000 people. Most of the services were given to laboring mothers, including to mothers in the border regions of Amhara and Afar. Tigray was also home to an increasing number of skilled workforce, ranging from health extension workers, who are rightfully called the backbone of the health system, to specialized physicians. The size of the workforce before the war was close to 20,000. Perhaps the most important indicator is the health workforce to population ratio, health worker to population ratio. They meet the ratio recommended by the WHO as a minimum guidance for healthcare quality. But after the war, again, from the needs assessment data, we learn about 2,000 health workers were registered as IDPs in IDP centers. And the study by Gussoso and colleagues I mentioned earlier showed more than 50%, which means about 10,000 of the health workers are not reporting to their work sites because of the war, displacement, and any other reasons that we are not aware of, that we don't know in details. Other data on healthcare collapse includes before the war, health facilities had access to supply chain management and vaccines. None of that is anymore there. EFSA, the Ethiopian Pharmaceutical Agency, around February, they covered only 23% of health facilities. Now they stopped. Computers, medical equipment, medicines are looted or destroyed. Health information data management does not exist anymore. The community health insurance, which helped about 2/3 of the population, is now out of function. So, to the next point that I was asked to address, now to the 3 critical priorities of the health system in post-war Tigray. So, for organizational purposes, the post-war health system development process can be separated into 4 phases. Each phase is characterized by certain inputs and end goals. The first phase is called the response phase. It happens in the first year after the war and is typically characterized by an absence of functioning institutions, similar to what we see in Tigray. Services during this response, during the response phase, means it happens after cessation of hostilities. During the response phase, the services are maintained via emergency service, commonly by non-governmental organizations and other organizations, similar to a war zone. So just to come back to the questions of 3 critical priorities for the health sector in Tigray during the response phase, I think it will need emergency human resources. It will also need a supply of essential drugs and medical devices. And it will need financial resources that can establish the response phase and get it ready to move to the next phase in about 1 year time. As I mentioned earlier, the response phase should last only about a year. The next phase is a transitional phase, which lasts about 5 years. And this is followed by the reconstruction phase, which will take about 5 years again. Finally, we reach the sustainable development phase for the health system, which is the phase in which the health system achieves its full potential, almost, more or less. As I just stated, the whole rebuilding process could take about 12 years. Now, to the third point, the barriers, seen and unseen barriers that must be managed to rebuild an equitable and sustainable health system in Tigray. I think, without going to theoretical details of the literature that I review as a researcher, I will give a recent example from a sister organization of HPN for Tigray, a charity organization that is currently active on the grounds in Mekelle. The most recent report is about activities they performed between November 14 and November 20, last week, basically. In that report, they screened 100 pregnant and nursing mothers in IDP camps. And they found 60% of pregnant women, 60% of pregnant women, and 70% of lactating mothers were malnourished. But this charity group is unable to provide care for these cases of malnutrition due to extreme challenges and constraints. Mainly, they are facing generally financial constraints. There is no funding, as we all know. The system has collapsed. It's under siege. Transportation difficulties for staff, transportation difficulties for medical and nutritional supplies, lack of electricity for medical equipment like ultrasound for scanning, lack of electricity for refrigerators to keep medication and perishable nutritional supplies. They have barriers of communication, simply no internet or phone services in most places. I think that this is the tip of the iceberg of the massive collapse that's happening in Tigray. To the fourth point, now about available resources, skills and gaps, and the needed skills to rebuild the system. When it comes to available skills and resources, there is a framework developed by the World Health Organization for building health systems. It's a guidance by the World Health Organization that most countries follow, more or less, with some adjustments. Sometimes what works for some may not work for others, but this is a framework. According to the framework, the building blocks of health system include 1, leadership and governance. And I think there is an exceptionally experienced leadership in Tigray that is committed to rebuild the health system as soon as possible. That's my understanding. Leadership creates a condition to design and implement a post-war health policy. Leadership aligns other sectors to support the health system to function well, like health technology, infrastructure, nutritional supplies, agricultural products, environmental protection, and many other sectors that impact the health system will be aligned, gathered for discussion and mitigation by the leadership. Leadership should develop regulations that ensure access to quality care, to protect the population from harmful practices, and design regulations for compliance and accountability. And I think there is this kind of leadership in Tigray, more or less. The other building block is the health workforce, of course. Again, I think there is unmatched motivation, exceptional determination, and resilience in the health workforce in Tigray. But as I mentioned earlier, with half of the workforce, about 10,000 of them, not reporting to their institutions. That imposes a serious challenge. The workforce, as we know, is the engine of the health system. And for this, in my opinion, the academic community should come together to mitigate and explore future options, how to fill the gap. Suppose most of them do not return back for one or another reasons. And another building block is the service delivery. I spoke about their destruction earlier. There are only few structures that weren't destroyed from the survey by Gestaso and their colleagues. They can be rehabilitated faster, those few remaining. The other building block, which I mentioned earlier, that do not exist anymore due to the blockage and the siege, are essential medical products, vaccines, and technologies. Financing system is another key building block. It should guarantee sufficient funds for health, for people to use services anytime, and to protect users as a population from financial crisis associated with health expenses. A health information system is another building block. It is necessary for storage, analysis, and sharing of medical data securely and safely. Now, to the final point, to address to the point, how might Tegaru diaspora remain engaged and prepared to support rebuilding Tigray when circumstances change? I think what we are doing right now at this hour, coming together, sharing information should be considered as a step forward. And thank you for the team at Tegaru Disaster Relief Fund for creating this opportunity today. I'm grateful. And based on my experience, I can just add a few points that HPN for Tigray was established in November 2020, a year ago, as a response to the humanitarian and public health crisis caused by the war on Tigray. We are about 200 volunteer members from diverse professional background, professionals in management, finance, human resource, IT specialists, lawyers, public health researchers like myself, clinicians, and students, to mention a few. So we work in different teams based on our skills, interest, and availability. We spend time discussing, brainstorming, sometimes weeping. It's been hard on us, Tegaru. We support each other, and we made progress for what we stand for. We have higher standards. We aim to go further in our goals. But so far, HPN for Tigray raises funds that help us sending medical and nutritional supplies to Tigray, water filters again to Tigray, and some supplies to refugee camps in Sudan. The wellness and education center that HPN for Tigray built in collaboration with a sister organization at a refugee camp in Sudan will be used to provide preventive and some clinical services. A portion of the building will be used as an education center for children that are forgotten because of their moving away from their schools from Tigray as a refugee children. These are a few of the practical examples I can think of when it comes to how to engage until the siege gets lifted, one way or another. I think I'm done with the bullet points I needed to address today. Thank you for your attention. And again, thank you for having me today. Moderators, please take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waini, for the detailed information about the health system in Tigray, pre-war and after war, and the necessary requirements to building the restoring and building the health system in Tigray. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Emnet Nagash, and he's a PhD candidate at Ghent University, Belgium. He's an expert in farming systems, hydrology, and climate related. And Emnet has been doing important job in documenting atrocities in Tigray. He has also been providing us with information about the humanitarian situation in Tigray. He will be speaking about the agricultural system and sustainable development or rebuilding in sustainable way in Tigray. Emnet, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Mali, for introducing me, and thank you everyone for being here. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. I'll be talking about agriculture and the food security in Tigray, and I'll briefly start from introducing what is about the pre-war conditions and also the current situation with the other points that I'm supposed to address. I'll try to be brief, but if I'm not, please take the freedom to stop me at any point in time, because we also have more experts I see down on the audience who can contribute a lot more. And yeah, I'll try to be brief. Yeah. So then, if I have to start talking about the agriculture sector, then it would usually go up to 3,000 years back in time, and that the same farming system that our farmers in Tigray are following, the oxen drawing traditional farming has been practiced since 3,000 years ago in Tigray already. And of course, there have been some attempts of modernization, but it remained traditional for that all along. And it naturally also, the land has been getting fragmented from time to time, and there was also a need for an alternative economic activities with the growing population and also the seasonal nature of the sector. So as the land, well, mostly the land holding size, if you are quite familiar with the farming system in Tigray, is mostly with about 1 hectare per household, I would say. But then from time to time, then this household head had to split his land holding to his sons and daughters from time to time. But then it gets smaller and smaller, and nowadays there are very many people who don't even have any piece of land, and some are having half a hectare, quarter hectare, and all that. And so with time, it gets and of course, the sector agriculture by itself is also seasonal, and that the farmers, the youth also gets motivated to look for alternative economic activities from time to time. And then getting close to the pre-war conditions, what do we have? There have been attempts to reform the sector towards mechanizing the sector, the agriculture, which we had the industrial parks, for instance. We may remember Bakr and the Raya industrial parks, for instance, trying to mechanize the sector as a sector. And but then it was among the things that has been interrupted, with the recent developments. And not only that, you may also remember that for the last couple of years, we have had the desert locusts destroying the farms and the yields as well. Not only the capability of the locusts to destroy, but also the willingness of the federal government to prevent and to impose much destruction and impact on an entire society was not only because of the war, but also, if you remember, the impacts of the damage caused by the locust by itself was also aggravated by the prevention, denial of any chemicals, technical support, equipment, and all that by the federal government on Tigray, which has also affected and destroyed the production, which we estimated to be about 25 to 30% of the yield that has been lost in 2020. And then the war came, which literally damaged the entire society, and particularly the agriculture as a sector. And well, we may remember that crop fields had been burned almost all over Tigray, but particularly and mainly in southern Tigray, and basically also in western Tigray, northwestern Tigray, around Shire and Shararo, and if you may also remember, around Rama, Gela, and all the way in Glomhada and Europe areas as well. So crop fields were also burned, and also after they were hit, and hit crops were burned. And it was not only limited to that, but once harvested, the grain was also burned during house-to-house search. And but not only that, not only the crops and the production, the harvest itself was burned, but household essentials were also looted and destroyed. Not limited to that, but if the farmers were having any remaining harvest at home, the grain mills themselves, which mostly functions on benzines and naphthas, were also destroyed and burned it down, and if any are existing, they now don't have fuel, and the farmers were only forced to eat roasted beans, which was quite difficult, I would say. And one more important thing to mention here is that the entire population was literally and deliberately impoverished, that household essentials were basically targeted. At some points, when we noticed that, especially the Eritrean soldiers targeting donkey plastic water containers, which we call them jerry cans, were targeted for looting. We thought, why are these guys obsessed towards jerry cans and donkeys? And which we did not give it enough attention. But in my view, it was a deliberate attempt to impoverish the society by denying, by taking the most essential household equipments. How would a society function without a donkey and plastic water bottles, these water pots? How would they fetch water from these spring waters, which are mostly located down the hill, while most of our population is living in the hilltops? The residents of our population, most of our population live in hilltops, in highlands. But in most cases in Tigray, if you remember, mentioning, for instance, the drinking water sources are down the hill, and in some cases, they will have to travel for kilometers, which also takes them hours. But then when they don't have these plastic water pots, the jerry cans, and the donkeys, how are they going to transport it? Not only the water, but also food and every equipment they would need. So Tigray's topography is also, as we all know it, we have much red topography without road access, which is difficult to even to access it by foot, let alone carrying something to transport. And that was a deliberate attempt, I would say. And of course, the destruction and the looting was not only limited to urban areas, but mostly the target was the farming community. The farmers are entirely and essentially impoverished at household level, in my view. And but then, even if, as I said earlier, even if the sector agriculture is seasonal and it's again labor intensive, and that now that most of the labor has gone, the labor force has now gone fighting, and that of course, we have reports of tens of thousands killed, civilians killed, and that most of these people who have been killed also happen to be farmers, and that we are also running out of this labor force. Now that we are on harvest season, I'm afraid would not have enough the limited production we would have. Having said this about the farming community, for instance, I would also love to mention a few things about the urban community, for instance. If we are to say we have about 6 to 7 million population in Tigray, about 30% of this population happen to be urban dwellers, which is about to be approximately about 2 million, and which is basically non-agricultural community, which it depends on non-agricultural economic activities, basically business owners, daily laborers, or employees or so, and that none of these businesses are now currently functioning. And how would we expect them to get to moment? And then again, if we have to mention, for instance, the government employees, we have estimates of about 130,000 employees, government, or maybe the employees within Tigray in general. And so I would say most or all have not been receiving salary since June, and some also did not receive any salary since November. You can imagine people have not been receiving salaries for the last 5 and 6 months, and in some cases for a whole year. And how would they be able to get to buy food or maybe any required medicine they may need for survival, which is quite difficult to imagine. And well, then we also know that there have not been any, there were no or limited emergency food aid in Tigray for the last 5 to 6 months, I would say, which makes it also more and more catastrophic. And I'm afraid that the number of people dying from starvation is by far more than the civilians that has been killed by the military. So then, we have this very conservative estimates by the UN that we have about 400,000 people living under famine, food security conditions already since June. And this comes under on condition that this would get one level worse if the intended food aid is not reaching. And by the intended food aid, we are referring to the 100 trucks per day, and which has not been happening for the last months, some months of like, I would say 5, 6 months, I would say. And the estimates were made by June already. So what does that mean? If the food aid was not reaching, then it means people who were already on emergency situation would go into famine situation, and those 400,000 would go die, and there's nothing beyond famine situation. Well, let's be more conservative than the UN again. Of course, people would survive eating some leaves, cactus, and of course, we also know that our people are very much resilient and innovative enough. And if they might have been surviving, what does this number mean, for instance? Then, by 400,000 people living under 5, and we are referring to with 2 people dying per 10,000 population, we are referring to 420 dying daily. That is a very conservative estimate. That is again since June. And how long have we come up since June? It has been 5 months, if I'm not wrong. And then if you multiply this, and then it would mean about 60,000 people might have died in the last 5 months alone, which is quite terrible. I mean, it could be beyond that again, I am afraid. But we could not find out what is happening in the reality in the middle of communication blackout, which is quite terrible again. Well, now that we are in a harvest season, but then we are only expecting 20 to 50% of the land to produce reasonable yield. And for how long do you think this production would take? The normal production we have had at maximum potential was not enough, I would say, but we are now expecting less than half, which is quite terrible. And for how long will this take us? And what is the future with we don't know how the war is going to continue and what are the probabilities on the way forward, and what happens to the people remains uncertain. Well, let me not take much time, and I'll go for the priorities. I would say, in my opinion, the first thing I would think I would say that has to be prioritized. It is the food. People need food, and we are talking this in a post-war Tigray. So they are essential, and they would need these basic household essentials. They are not having food. They are not having houses. The houses have been trashed, essentially, especially in Western Tigray, in northern Inns, all the way from Medawai to Europe. And of course, the entire Tigray has been trashed, and the houses are damaged. The household essentials are looted and destroyed. They don't even have clothes, and they need food and basic household essentials. And the other thing we have is we have over 2 million people displaced, and we need to restore them into their native locations, native positions. If we take, for instance, Western Tigray, where we have more than 80% of the population displaced and the rest may be killed, I don't know how much is remaining. I only know how much is displaced, which we estimate to be about 80% of the native population, the pre-war population, is displaced. But we don't know how much was killed and how much is remaining, because it still remains a black spot. But everything in Western Tigray has been trashed. And if we are thinking of restoring them, sending this population, freeing Western Tigray and sending them to their native location is not an end. It will be like bringing out a fish from a whole ocean and putting him in a desert. So then, not only to restore into pre-war conditions, but we also need to think of this as an opportunity to take off for the sector agriculture. It should be it should be considered as an opportunity to take off once and for all. And then, if we have to do this, what do we need? Then, among the things we have to do, and to take off, it would be among the things we have to do is we need an integration between the farming community, the public servants, and also the academic community that needs to come before anything else, I would say, and which would also involve the other stakeholders. So by farming community is where we have the issues to tackle, which is the focus of the agriculture as a sector. But then we have the public servant, which basically focus to try to solve the issues we have, the administrator we have in the sector. And they have their own ways of doing it, which they mostly know it by experience. And the academicians, we try to look at things from academic point of view, not knowing sometimes not having the psychosocial understanding of the sector. But then we need to integrate this to bring a lasting and feasible, sustainable projects to implement and to ensure a takeoff in this sector. And of course, I'm saying this because we have had some failed projects. We could, for instance, talk about the Horeya project. We mobilized the entire population to implement it all over Tigray, but we again had to mobilize to bury it back. We have again the project of fertilizer price. You know that fertilizer price is cheaper in Kobo than in other parts of Tigray, than in any other parts of Amhara, because of fertilizer policy we have in Tigray. And we mostly have the issue of one-size-fits-all agro-ecosystem management approach that needs to be revised, I would say. And then if we have to ensure this, we need an integration between the farming community, the public servants, the bureaus, the bureaucratic community, and the academic community in this case. And this should not aim at restoring to the pre-war conditions, but then it should be considered as an opportunity to take off in the sector. I would want to underline this point. And I think I'm taking my time, and again, I'll go to the barriers, the seen and unforeseen barriers that we have. And the first and foremost barrier, seen or barrier, I would say, is the way forward, and that the way forward still remains to be seen. We don't know what is the future, how the conflict itself would progress and how it would end. If we think that the war has ended already, we don't know how the state itself, the post-war Ethiopia, would react into the needs, the interest of Tigray, the agricultural community we have, and how the state would react, how the international community would react, and that would essentially affect our agricultural policy and also our intentions to work on in restoring and rebuilding the sector agriculture. And the second thing I would mention is the logistic and the finance. Like I said earlier, that let alone as a society and as a government, that the people have been essentially impoverished, and at household level, this would demand a lot of logistics and finance, and that is going to be a limitation and a barrier, I would say, a potential barrier. And the other thing I would say, I would mention as a barrier is availability. Data availability. If we are to engage as academic community, if we are to engage as and plan it and look the way forward, essentially, we need the data that allows to look at the empirical evidence on what has happened, what is happening, and what is anticipated. But then, without which proper understanding and the planning which is going to be difficult. Not only the agriculture as a sector, but Tigray is also generally known to lack a proper database of almost anything and everything, I would say. And again, the other barrier I see is the disparity between the farming community, the bureaucratic community, which is the public servant, and also the academic community. And we need to integrate this, to bring these two efforts together so that we achieve our intended aim. And the other thing I would say is the available resource and the skill tools we have and the gaps, we need to fill it. So among the resources we have available, the potentials we have is we have a resilient society, which is a big asset. Among the most resilient societies on earth we have is the society we have in Tigray, who can build, who can bounce back with little support. And we also have the commitment of an entire community within Tigray, and also the community, the overseas community, which is the diaspora, to build it again irreversibly, I would say. But then again, we have the disparity that has to be filled in. So what I plan from here might not be feasible on the ground. Then that means there needs to be an integration between who are on the ground and who those of us are overseas. And the other enabler we have is the environment by itself. The environment as an enabling factor, the topographic variability, for instance, allowing diversification of the sector in a way to manage the production, let it be for household consumption, for local markets or export. So then with the topographic variability, we have the lowlands, we have the midlands, the lowlands, where we can grow diversified crops, diversified farming systems, which is again an enabling factor, I would say. But what if Tigray remains inaccessible? What are we expected to do? What do we have? What do we have to do if Tigray remains closed? What can we do in the meantime? I would say the first thing we can do as a community is the emergency fundraising under an umbrella of local non-profit organizations such as that of our host today, the Tegaru Disaster Relief Fund, and many others we have. And the other thing is what...
Dr. Imnet, sorry to interrupt. You're way over your time. Just to remind you, so if you could
sorry for that.
Include, yes. No worries.
Yeah, 1 or 2 minutes. Sorry for that. Okay. Yeah, then the other thing I would say is what can the academic community do? And we have seen developments that we have recent publications, for instance, the publication on health, the publication on agriculture, and many other publications coming up. We need to work on that more and more on that. But then thinking the future and rebuilding, reconstruction of Tigray again, we need to work on and project proposals that attract grants to help reconstruction. And beyond that, we all together also need to work on documenting and communication of the proper narration on what is happening, what has happened already, and what is expected to happen in the way forward, and what needs to be done also needs attention. Of course, there have been good works that are being carried on already. We have, for instance, the initiatives by Tigray team, for instance, Omna Tigray, and many others that are with written and virtual media. Many other medias also recently initiated, but then we don't have to forget that they need our support, also technically, but also financially, and more than that. And we have to lead on the narration sector by sector, individually, and by group professionally as well. And thank you, and sorry for taking my time. And yeah.
No worries, Nerike. I'd like to appreciate the fact that you mentioned Europe twice as an advocate for the minority. I've noticed that. Malay, go ahead. I think Kasanet wants to go next. If you can introduce Kasanet.
Hello?
Yes, Malay.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you, Malay. Continue.
Okay, so our next speaker is Sanet Molla. She is the founder of Tigray Hub and Damat. She's a special engineer, and she will be talking about social enterprise. Sorry, in the schedule it was supposed to be Mahrat. I was prepared to introduce Mahrat. Sorry. Go ahead, Kasanet.
Actually, we can go with the schedule. Maybe yeah, sure.
Actually, I think Mahret asked to do.
Yes.
To go second to the last. She asked.
Just so if you could go.
Yeah, definitely, sure. Hi, everyone. So thanks for having me here. And Salami, I think it's first time me hearing you. You have a beautiful voice, by the way. And also, interesting points were raised by my fellow Tigrayans, and having to be here among all of these amazing people makes me feel like I still have a lot to do. Well, but I will just continue with my presentation. Well, I will be specific and talk about one of my projects that I was running as a social enterprise, having a special purpose. It's called Damat, with the slogan, "We impact, we profit." So Damat is a platform that connects farmers and consumers directly to prevent farmers from selling their products to middleman brokers at an exploitative prices, and providing agricultural products for consumers at a reasonable price. Well, about the status, it was a startup business running in Magala, in Addis. Well, after the war broke out, we literally stopped everything because what we do everything online, and there is a connection blackout in Tigray and also in Addis due to the security reasons. We pause everything. So the three critical priorities specifically for Damat and also for state sectors are, of course, internet, and we need motivated farmers for the production of the goods, infrastructure, like for networks. So internet to provide the service, the products, the service the service we provide, and infrastructures are the critical priorities in this case, I would say. And the seen and unseen barriers in this sector are, the critical priorities I mentioned earlier are still the barriers in this sector, but mainly the lack of digital literacy, internet, and producers are the ones I would like to emphasize. We're supposed to connect the farmers, which are mostly found in rural areas, and also the users mostly in the urban areas or the capitals. And if both parties are not playing with the platform, then that slows down the whole environment, while the intention of the platform being facilitating the service, among other important values, then it goes against whatever it's intended to do. And what we used to do was we used to feed the data, the information of the agriculture products from the farmers ourselves, or ask the DS, the development agents, to feed the data, or at least send us the product pictures with the price, and we feed it. Or this is if our team is not already in the area, in the farmland. And when looking in the user side, people are used to buying products from the market in person, choosing fresh products, and they have less trust or even the information of credible service providers as such. So that was a bit, not a bit actually, it was a headache. It was not easy. What can we do, or the best part of the conversation, right? What can we do about it is, okay, we have the farmers, we have the land, we have, the resources we have over the farmers, the land, the consumers, and also skilled manpower, right? Our main source is the farmer, motivated farmers, and providing different, so how to go about this will be motivating the farmers, providing different investment trainings, and introducing new farming skills, like, for example, drip irrigation. Would massively increase the reachability and also sustainability of our service, because it has a direct impact. When I was in Tigray, we used to travel with my partner to study the areas and what the products are available in Tigray. And mostly farmers are rain dependent, right? What they produce. During winter, they say, when we interview those farmers, they say they work on carpentry or other tasks and farming, because they have to make money, and then there is no rain, so they can't do anything about it. So those people are the people with great skill of farming, and I would suggest providing the needed skill set and materials for those people, and making them engage at what they do best would help them enhance their production. And that's a great thing for us, because their products are literally our input. I know there is a partnership with Cultivate about the drip irrigation I mentioned, but maybe expanding such initiatives would be a great start, especially now that a lot of things are destroyed. Such skills would be important, I think. And about the digital literacy, as I mentioned before, this has been a big barrier in making the users and producers. By the way, my phone shows me that my connection is poor. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great.
Yes, that's true. We can hear you.
Okay. So about making the users and producers engage in the platform, but creating digital literacy would solve this problem, I think, and make things a lot easier. And this can happen using extensive promotion, and provide internet would also facilitate the job, I think. I speak very fast, but I think that will also help us to compensate all the time that we have been, So to how Tegaru diasporas remain engaged, I think we have different ways of engaging. I can talk about Tigray Hub here as an example. I started Tigray Hub as a way to transfer what I know on the entrepreneurship area, to connect people with ideas and people that are interested in investing. But it was just a side project. Like, I was working on the top of the AMA at school and other extra curriculums I used to take at school. But later on, after Tigray War, my partner joined me. in Tigray Hub, and we started this global campaign in call for action, right, aiming to raise the awareness about the war and human rights violation committed against the people of Tigray. And later on, so many amazing people and brilliant Tigrayans, including Dr. Madhani, joined us, and we are working on different sectors in addition to the campaigns. Like we're still structuring different projects, of course, but we are working on bringing people together with people with different skills and assign them based on different thematic areas that they are comfortable with, and also their profession. For example, we have teams of food security, health. You might have noticed a team called Nasabawan. They're part of our health team. Technology, entrepreneurship, mostly led by Dr. Madhani. Education, tourism, you probably have seen Ancient Tigray, that's also a part of our project. Lawyers and different projects. And we do this by collaboration, multidisciplinary approaches, volunteerism, etc. So Tegaru diasporas can, I think, engage by engaging in such civil service initiatives, initiatives like a lot of people have been mentioning, including Dr. Waini, by creating anything that we think we can provide for Tigray, by networking, by resource mobilization, and if you are impact venture capital firm, then by investing to potential projects and social enterprises that can help for to rebuild Tigray. And if you have no idea where to start, again, reaching out to one of the active civil service initiatives or advocacy group could be of a good start. I think using those methods, we can all be part of the rebuild and equitable building an equitable, sustainable Tigray. This is just a sample of a project I did as an entrepreneur and who have been involved in social enterprise projects. I would say when thinking of working on social enterprise, the projects we are intending to work should keep in mind the involvement of the community. This was mentioned by Professor Getachew. I really emphasize that. If we're planning for a sustainable project, then the solution or the intervention that we come up with should be sound and compatible with the people or the target community, right? This doesn't mean we can't be innovative or creative, but we should always keep in mind the stakeholders and assess the people that we're working for, right? And it's all about changing the problems into opportunities, right? And sometimes the journey might not be as easy because we have seen that when working Damat, even to get a license has been a hassle. And also the goal of the project depends on the type of the measures that we usually measure. So I would say don't you dare quit, because it will definitely pay off. And finally, before I say thank you, I would love to say, because I promised to myself, I will say this whenever I get a chance, let's please promote and entertain diverse and free flow of ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kasanet. Wow, thank you for the interesting talk. And young entrepreneurs like yourself is what Tigray needs now. Thank you very much.
Malay, before you continue, can I just quickly reset?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for joining us. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today we are discussing on the Tigray activity, hosted by media, collaboration.
Sorry, it's quite hard to hear you.
Hey, sorry.
A little bit far from the mic. Just want to.
You hear me now?
Much better, yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Just saying that we are today's Giving Tuesdays, hosted by UMD Media and TDRF Funds. We're discussing with our amazing guests on how to rebuild Tigray sustainably. We have great question and answer session after this. Also auction and entertainment to follow. In the meantime, let me just remind you, have questions, back channel myself, Asefa, Johannes, so we could save time and get to your questions. Thank you. Maybe you can introduce the next guest.
Thank you. Salam. Our next speaker is Dr. Medhanie. Dr. Medhanie is an associate professor of management and organization theory at Umeå University in Sweden, and he will be talking on entrepreneurship. Dr. Medhanie, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me and for organizing such an event. I'd also like to thank the panelists for the amazing presentations so far. So as you say, I do research in organization studies and entrepreneurship. With an entrepreneurship, I focus mainly on the early phase, new venture creation support systems. Lately, like on Tegaru, I have been working on my review Tigray project with my amazing friends such as Kasamet. So for me, one area that I think is very important to create a prosperous and sustainable Tigray is entrepreneurship. More specifically, currently working on hands-on entrepreneurship education with the ultimate goal of creating a vibrant startup ecosystem in Tigray. So that's what I'm going to briefly present today. I don't have any like a general presentation about entrepreneurship, but rather I'm going to talk about the project that we are currently working on. So my knowledge about what has been happening in Tigray in this specific area is quite limited. I don't have the data, but we have started documenting the availabilities of entrepreneurship education or other support systems such as incubators and accelerators. However, I know of national initiatives sponsored by UNDP that mainly focuses on short-term training on entrepreneurship. They mostly in these kind of certificates. I know of recent initiatives by JCC as well, the Job Creation Commission, but they are mostly in Addis and surrounding. In Tigray, there was an initiative run by Laak Zagayev. I don't know if he's in the audience, who was working with Professor Kandaya and others to create space for graduates of MIT. It was some kind of an incubator that would serve as a platform for the graduates to turn their ideas into businesses. Mahali University also had an incubator focusing on agriculture, but I can tell that there is no local initiative that uses these massive open online courses or MOOCs in the area of entrepreneurship and venture creation, and that's what we are going to work on. So these MOOCs provide an efficient and flexible way to learn skills and deliver quality education at scale. So what we're working on is an online and hands-on new venture creation program that runs between 6 to 8 weeks. The program contains curated lecture videos, reading materials, detailed instructions in successful cases. In addition, it connects participants with business coaches and mentors who help them realize their ideas.
Dr. Medhanie, if you could speak up a little bit, please.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So the program is an actual entrepreneurship training program where participants come together, form a team, and work from ideation to pitching their ventures. So the end result is beyond certification. And by the end of the program, participants will have a short business model for an elevator pitch, which they may present to an investor, collaborator, or a sponsor. They will have a well-composed business idea or a venture concept for seed or angel round fundraising, and they will have a high-fidelity prototype validated on a concept level for any presentation or demonstration. The contents that we have so far include ideation information. We have content on market analysis, beachhead market identification, beachhead market pain testing and validation. We have content on value proposition and selection of revenue models. with content on minimum viable product development and testing, and also pitching. So these are some of the contents that we already have. And if we do this enough and get some kind of traction, I hope we will in the long term create a vibrant startup ecosystem to help Tigray youth pursue their dreams. I also believe it will help create an entrepreneurial culture that can change the community and improve the lives of Tegaru. And the cool thing about this program is it can be done as a standalone project or in collaboration with the universities and schools all over Tigray. And if the option is there, some graduates might even consider entrepreneurship as one option after completing their studies. So when I was invited, I was thinking, okay, why do we need this entrepreneurship, and why now, right? So many of the firms and factories that used to employ thousands are already destroyed, right? And it's going to take some time to rebuild and go back to how things were. And many of those who had their own businesses have already lost it to looting, destruction, and siege. So I believe this rebuilding project will employ some of them, but it won't be enough. So entrepreneurship can close the gap because those who were employed but aren't anymore can engage in individual creation. If the opportunity is there, if there is some kind of program available. There are also thousands who have interrupted their education and lives, for example, to fight. And when they come back, new education could be presented as one opportunity to pursue. But most importantly, I think this was also mentioned by Tigray, is if we are to transform Tigray, we need to rethink and reimagine our problems and create something better in different sectors. And we can do that through entrepreneurship, be it in education, tourism, farming, health, what have you. So the problem that we have now is very unique. So it requires some new way of thinking, new way of kind of imagining our problems and solutions. Yeah. On the second point, when it comes to the critical priorities, I remember Dr. Siraj's interview at the UMD Media with Getachew, saying that one of the things that the government of Tigray and the diaspora need to prioritize is internet connection. I'm glad Xamet also said that. So for our and other similar programs, the priority should be on fast, reliable, and cheap internet connection. And in this case, I think the diaspora can appeal people like, Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg to connect Tigray through the Starlink project or Facebook connectivity initiative. So to make the best of it, I think there is some similarity with what Kasan said. We might also add this digital literacy at all levels. Tigray should be connected and connected well. I'm sure many are working on different projects that they wanted to run from Europe, the US, and elsewhere. There are also many who have content that work in the West, for example, which can be used in Tigray with some adaptation. So if there is fast, reliable, and cheap, connection, it will make it super easy to engage with our brothers and sisters in Tigray. So like Dr. Siraj and Kasanet, and I'm 100% sure many of you are also thinking in the same way. I think connectivity and digital literacy should be top priorities, not only to rebuild, but also to transform Tigray, right? There is also an interesting expression in the Tegaru digital force. They say that they are very militant and so online. We need people that kind of people back home as well, right? So in terms of the barriers, both seen and unseen, we all know that most of what we had has been destroyed, including the education-related infrastructure. That means the destruction is visible for all to see, and it might be a barrier both in the short and long term. However, there is this invisible barrier that we need to be aware of and be ready to do something about, right? So when it comes to the project that we have in mind, moral of the people might be a problem. After opening up, we realize the extent of the destruction and the trauma. So I suspect moral might not be high for someone to invest, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks to work on something that will take months to realize it is even not certain. So I wish I'm wrong here, but we have to prepare for that. So in our case, there might be a need to collaborate with different funders so that those who participate in our program get some kind of compensation. In addition, finding a way for example, granting seed money upon completion to continue working on their ideas might also work. In addition, as part of developing the startup ecosystem, we might bring in people so that they can invest in the ideas of prospective entrepreneurs. So if investors show interest in investing in people in their ideas, that might motivate future entrepreneurs to join this kind of program. There is also a possibility to connect startups who have novel solutions, for example, with big private and government organizations in Tigray. It could be for proof of concept, for a pilot, or to even integrate their solutions into these companies. So the idea here is that we have to be ready when excitement is not there for our projects. It's also about being equipped as you might meet people who might be in a really bad place or are traumatized for all these reasons. I think Amnet has also covered some part of it because that the war has affected almost all, regardless of their social status before. So that is something that we need to do with these invisible barriers related to our projects. When it comes to the available resources and skill sets that we have, I think I totally agree with Amnet that it is the people of Tigray in their motivation, especially the youth. So if we can replicate the motivation, the intensity, the resilience that we have seen during this war, that's a resource enough to start with. And we have seen that we are capable of, doing wonders, So one of the things that this war did is actually reconnect the Tigrayans to their roots. And more than that, it has also reignited, our love for Tigray. Okay, so with the knowledge, network, resources that the Tegaru in the diaspora have, they can collaborate with their sisters and brothers back home and solve Tigray's problem. Even start, bold global firms where their market is not restricted to Tigray or Africa for that matter. Yeah, there are also resources in markets that people back home might not have access at the moment, but those in the diaspora can. Right? So working on networking and collaboration is a good way to help prospective entrepreneurs back home access the global resources, networks, and markets. What else we have? Yeah, we have also material resources. In our case, we have course content platform that is already tested and can be adopted with minimal contextualization. I believe there is also, financial resources available for right projects in the diaspora. So our resource is mainly, the people and their motivation to rebuild and transform Tigray, right? The last point, okay, how should we kind of remain engaged and prepared to support rebuilding Tigray? I mean, this kind of forum is amazing because it helps us to kind of connect with so many people, share our ideas. So the first thing I would say is work on the projects, develop them and test them with Tigrayans in the diaspora, and if possible, with those who are currently in Ethiopia. The second thing that we need to do at the moment is pool resources and create network so that the networks that we might need so that we can start the moment Tigray opens up. We don't have to wait until Tigray opens up to start projects. Third is to share what we are working on, like what we are doing right now, so that people join hands to avoid unnecessary repetitions. By also doing that, we can increase the value of these similar projects. Another thing is to work on contingency plans because everything that we need to implement our projects might not be available. For example, in our case, internet might not be available to run this project, right? So we have to find a way for people to access the materials and instructions offline. Another contingency that we have is, for example, to be physically in Tigray for the duration of the project. Another thing is to upload the content in tablets and either give them to the participants or you can reuse the tablets for different cohorts, right? So if we are working, this is like a call. If you're working in such area, please reach out to Samet or me. If you have the data about similar initiatives, again, contact us. We can work together. Currently, for example, be grateful if someone with expertise in developing interactive websites could join our friend Marhawi, who is working on this project from Addis. What else? That's pretty much what I have. Thank you so much.
Oh, great, Dr. Madhani. I was about to interrupt you, say that you're running out of time, so you did it right on time. Thank you so much. Just like to remind everyone that I've just pinned, we have a YouTube live session as well on UMD Media. Just make sure you have our Q&A right after this presentation. So please do send us all your questions so we can address them. Just make sure you're following UMD Media and TDR Funds on Twitter as well. We have Q&A and entertainment and auction to follow. I would let Malay introduce them, I think, our final guest. Go ahead. Malay, we can't hear you if you're actually speaking.
Yeah, I'm speaking. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have two speakers. We have two speakers. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Just speak a bit louder and clearer, please. But okay. We can hear you fine. Good to know. I don't know if anyone could hear Malay, or is it my...
I also can't hear Malay. I think it's it.
Right.
She's on mute. She's on mute.
I think she's on mute. If you could unmute your speaker, Malay, and then we can hear you.
Yeah, she's back.
Yeah, yep. That's the one.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
hear you, so continue.
Oh my God. I don't know what's wrong with the microphone.
Maybe she can't hear us. Can you hear us, Malay? I think you're on mute again.
Perhaps, you can introduce the speakers if it's...
Yeah, we've all been there. I don't have the... Malay, can you speak now?
My goodness.
It's fine, we can hear.
Can you? It says yeah. Can you hear me now?
Has a little stick there, so she's needed to... Malay's not a disaster.
Hi, Salam. Should I introduce myself? Maybe.
I think so. Let's just. Okay, sorry. I'll just take over for a minute. If you could hear me. Sorry, Dr. Mehrat. I don't have your bio with me at the moment. I'm so sorry, but I would let you introduce yourself properly. You can do it a lot more justice than I do. So go ahead and continue to take the stage.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation also. My name is Mira Tyler, and I'm a food and nutrition scientist and have worked mostly in communication, food and communication, but also food security, especially in the last, between 2016 and 2019, I was working in Tigray with an international NGO, and my project was focusing on women and children, how to improve their nutrition status, but also how to improve nutrition at all, and mostly also when it comes to communication, how do you raise awareness and communicate the importance of nutrition, especially during the 1,000 days. So coming to especially to the first 1,000 days, which are very critical for the health and the development of a child, but also of the future adult. There were different strategies. Some of them were nutrition-sensitive agriculture approaches, which were actually focusing more on the community, but also on the women health, women health households, but also on bringing awareness also with different celebrities such as singers, but also religious leaders, just to improve the nutrition status, because the nutrition status of in Tigray was still high. I mean, it was around 32%, but it was not severe, but it was also not, we were not talking about starvation. And this malnutrition status, which were pre-war, were actually mostly coming from, for example, from cultural habits such as fasting, which especially during pregnancy, women were still not eating animal food, and to change, to make at least some changes in terms of the food habits or diet habits. There were different strategies, but nevertheless, we are experiencing right now the impact of undernutrition. We don't know the impact, how much it is, but when we talk about good nutrition is very important for the development of the child, especially the 1,000 days, which is actually provides ensure actually the brain development, and not having this proper nutrients of food or access to food during pregnancy or the first 1,000 days. The impact is will have a lifelong physical and mental damages, like limited learning abilities, limited working capacity during adulthood, decreased resistance to infections and illness, and especially children with high, severe, acute malnutrition are vulnerable to and have a high mortality risk. So knowing this, there are so many children right now, which will be the future of Tigray, and those children are in high risk, not being able to fulfill their full ability or capacity to work. This will have a high economic, but also heavily health impact on Tigray and those children. There were reports in 2013 from the World Food Program, which was indicating the losses of 16.5% of GDPs each year in terms of long-term effects of child nutrition. So having these numbers from 2013, and if we compare them, we don't know the outcome. So we can just imagine how critical it is, and how important actually nutrition is. I will not come to the numbers because Imnet and Dr. Rainey, they really explain it very well, especially when it comes to agriculture and availability of food and how the health sector was before. So I will just jump into what are the critical priorities right now in the post-war. Given the situation, if aid is still not going to be accessible before the war ends, that means if the first thing to do would be definitely to stabilize the most vulnerable groups who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, and treat them with high energy food, and stabilize them rehabilitation, but also ensure continued access to variety, safe foods which are available at at affordable prices. Also, this is also, I think, one thing we will have to have on mind, that food might be available, but people might not have the money to access to those foods. So there must be some way, a safety net program, I think, which provides the poor, especially the poor and vulnerable groups, a safe diet, at least a day. So the situation might not deteriorate. And after that, I think the focus would be, after that, important focus would be like focusing on local available food, which are drought resistant, but also easy to grow and also easy to get, especially when it comes to seeds. I think it's the seeds are not everywhere, especially now. We don't know if they're available, when they will be available, so it will cost some money. So we should be focusing on food which or on marginal crops, which are not usually preferred during normal times, but can be adapted during food crisis, such as for example, bellis could be some of it, or moringa, edible foods. I will come later to that, but I think this could be one thing we should be adapting, but also easy. Like there are wild foods like what do you call them? Hamle adri, stuff like that, which you can actually easily grow at home and adapt it. So the focus could be really to ensure sustainable and food security on long term. Could be like household backyard farming or urban agriculture, which is also even important in Europe, for example, to ensure, especially during COVID. Right now, here in Europe, there was a huge increase of urban gardening by having this community society or growing food at home. It created some safe, not really safety net, but it created a place where we actually exchange seeds, but also exchange knowledge about what to grow and how to grow. But it also ensured some food during times which when you could not actually go out and get everything from the market. And some other approaches would be some local available vegetables with high vitamins and other nutrients, which can be also grown with in a short time, such as carrots, for example. They grow very fast, or salads, different, or pumpkin are, for example, very easy to grow. And those food, are very sustainable, because for example, when you have pumpkins, you can actually eat the leaves, you can eat the seeds, and you can eat the whole fruit. And this is sustainable, in my opinion, because there is no waste at all, and it provides you with a lot of vitamins, with a lot of nutrients, but knowing that this kind of foods, or like bellis or seeds, pumpkins especially, are not really what I experienced during the cooking demonstration when I was holding with women. It was always difficult for them to encourage them to eat more pumpkin, because for them it was like they're not used to it, they don't like it. It's poor people food, or lentil, sugar, for example, and so on. So to encourage and to ensure behavior change, there needs to be a lot of capacity building, but also communication. And this cannot be done definitely just from the nutrition side. When we talk about nutrition, there are so many different sectors which we need to work together with to ensure that communication and the capacity building is actually done, or the knowledge and on how to grow these different fruits or vegetables. However, all these wild edible foods needs communication. But I think also asking what I really loved was also like really I used to talk with the women, like when I introduced something new, which was not really new, but somehow forgotten, they always knew something better. Like for example, when we talk about Nuke, I did this oil project, and I was actually focusing on producing oil with the women, and they said like they explain how to make oil and how to use actually the oil cake for kucha and so on. So these are knowledge also which should be written on. Also, I think it's important that some knowledge get not lost. Sorry, my English sometimes, that we don't lose this knowledge also. So including women or elderly is, I think, also important when we want a behavior change, and also like introducing this different methods of food, which definitely should not be completely new to them. It should be definitely adapted to the local community, but also to the local, to the area and so on. So, I mean, I cannot introduce, for example, orange sweet potatoes in high areas such as Arctic rice, it will not go to. So there needs to be different strategies. And when it comes to, sorry, I'm talking a little bit too long, but I will finish very fast. So then when it comes to the barriers I have seen, I mean, there are many barriers which we don't know about right now and cannot definitely say how it be, but I think the one of the biggest barriers is definitely droughts and the climate change, but also to access to improved seed. And one barrier is also the cultural behavior and the religious aspect, which also needs to be included into the strategy. So these are barriers which needs a lot of work and to strengthen also the agriculture policies and to produce environmental friendly and sustainable food, which is drought resilience, but also other methods are very important, like food preservation, access to food, school feeding, for example. Early school feeding, I think, is very important, especially for children who cannot afford the food at home. So providing meals could be one of the strategy, which is also very important. By providing school feeding, we can actually help increase the health of the nutrition status of children. But also the food preservation methods and agro-processing is one aspect which was not really, I mean, which was still not progressed, but it should be definitely a focus, because there between, I mean, sometimes there were food waste, like 30% of tomatoes used to be thrown away because they couldn't sell it for low prices, and drying method were not really introduced. So this is one area we could focus, like really on food processing, drying methods, or different easy method which we can introduce without investing a lot of money. I mean, there is sun, there is there you can do actually a lot with having this the weather. And the specific for me is always like focus on women, on also empower them to, especially when it comes to urban gardening, to home gardening, backyard gardening, and also capacity building is important. So that way, having them empowering them, I think it can improve households on the food security situation. And when it comes to what the diaspora can do, and right now to be prepared to support rebuilding Tigray, I think there are many organizations, there are many Tegaru groups who are working already on helping or supporting aid and so on. What I really miss is like there are so many, but there's not enough information. Maybe we can build up a platform or where we can exchange our experience, talk about or support each other, especially when it comes to communicate how to help to support those people. I think we should stay ready and already maybe check or talk with each other which areas are critical right now, where can we be prepared, and start supporting each other. Thank you. This is I'm done.
Sorry, before I Melo, we can't hear you. You're very... Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Not clearly. If you could speak up a little bit. Yeah. Should I quickly reset and then you could introduce the last guest?
Yeah.
Great, amazing. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you guys are. Thank you for joining us. I've just pinned our YouTube page. This being broadcasted live on UMD Media. Today's event is to do with rebuilding Tigray sustainably. We had an amazing guest that talked about, presented on healthcare, agriculture, nutrition, and just the overall future of Tigray and how we could rebuild it. We have one more guest, and then we will have Q&A as to today's Giving Tuesdays, hosted by UMD Media and TDRF Fund. So if you could actually go on Twitter as well, follow TDR Funds. Yes, that's their handle. It'd be great. We have Q&A and entertainment and auction, so stay with us. Any questions that you have, you can back channel myself, Johannes, Asafa. That'd be great. So may they take you away and introduce our final guest before our Q&A?
Okay, thank you, Salah. Thank you, Mohammed. I'm sorry about earlier. And the last speaker is Solomon Nerga. He's the CEO of North Star Airline. And he will be talking about business and or investment. Solomon, please go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't know, after amazing speakers, I don't know if I would be performing as much as you guys. My name is Solomon Nekta Gabramikael or Gabramaito. I'm actually here today to discuss on investment opportunities in Tigray, challenge, and as entrepreneur and as a project manager. In my current capacity, I am the CEO of a startup airline in Tigray. It's called North Star. I don't know if you guys know about it. We have actually a sister company here. Makonnen is also in the audience. We are creating another sister company in the US under the US laws. It's called North Star Business Group. We're selling shares. So I want you guys to check our website and then spread the word and buy shares. But today, I'm here to discuss on what our contribution should be in rebuilding Tigray. And look on my experience in the past. What are the challenges? What kind of challenge we expect in the future? And how can we solve them ahead of time? And what opportunities are coming from this crisis? So I moved to Tigray 5 years ago from the US. So initially I started the consulting business in Addis, and it has some issues with my partners, politics and stuff. So when Abiy was elected as the PM, I moved to Tigray. I didn't like the whole thing in Addis. So I started a small-scale bakery business in Tigray. So the bakery is a small-scale investment at the cost of about 2 million birr. And I don't want to right now be too negative and discuss on the challenges and issues I have faced, mostly bureaucratic. Today, what I wanted to focus is what can we do towards the rebuilding effort in Tigray, only on the positive side. So we don't expect the government of Tigray to create jobs and to help everyone unemployed and the rebuilding effort to fix everything. So our contribution, especially in the diaspora, is very, very big. So how can we help Tigray? So before I go there, I just wanted to discuss a little bit about my business. So the bakery business was growing very well. Initially, started with one main, and then I started opening outlets, and then I hired delivery service who can deliver my products to various restaurants and cafes and fast food places. So business was booming. I've hired about 12 people, so it created a job opportunity for about 12 people, direct and indirectly contract workers who can come once in a while, maybe once a week, and work on new products like the biscuits, cookies, and etc. On a small scale, it's in about 1 year, I was able to create a job opportunity for about 12 people. At times we were producing maximum capacity. I haven't reached the maximum capacity, or my bakery could do about 10 to 20 quintals, or and metric, about 5 to 10, on average 15 quintals a day. I did not reach that stage yet, but yeah, so I was growing until after the war, and then as a result of the war, and I was forced to close 2 of the outlets, and the main bakery is not working right now. So what were the challenges I had before? Is raw materials. The raw material is mostly we use wheat flour, and there was a shortage of wheat. That's again related with the hard currency shortage in the country. And in terms of manpower, I think there is a lot of manpower in Tigray that can be easily trained. Very young, hardworking, passionate, and with a little training, they can do a lot of things. So in terms of manpower, there was no issue at all. The 2 major problems that I had in the past, other than the bureaucracy, is power outlet, power shortage, constant interruption of power, and raw materials. So I'm sure in the future, this power issue, you have heard today what happened because they hydroelectric dam, that I believe is going to be one of the biggest challenges for people who want to invest, and that requires a lot of power. So the current output from the Kakazi, I think it's enough for whatever we have in Tigray, but if we don't invest on producing a lot of power, I think that could be a bottleneck for investment opportunities in Tigray. So what can we do here from the diaspora? Are we just sitting here and waiting for TDF to free Tigray and then change the government to Tigray in Ethiopia and expect them to give us loans and then go back home and work? What can we do at the diaspora from here? I think we can contribute in 2 ways. One, if we have money, we can invest. I am hopeful that the future of Tigray will require investment opportunities, like for instance, tax-free opportunities for Tigray. So that way we can send machineries, we can send factory machines to Tigray and without paying the duty taxes. So if we have money now, we can invest in Tigray and create job opportunities for our fellow Tegaru. And you should also imagine all these TDF fighters, when the war is over, they will be going back to Tigray. Now, the healthcare field, I think a lot of things should be done in terms of helping with PTSD, counseling, and et cetera. But we have a huge unemployment that's coming in the future. So the role of the private sector is going to be very important. We have to create small-scale businesses. If we have money, we can invest. If we don't have money and we have skills, for instance, A person who works in a flower shop can go and open a flower shop or a small flower farm. Yeah, you can also participate in agro processing, like one of the speakers was talking about bellies. You can process bellies and make it like jam and juices, etc. So using the local resources, if we have the know-how, if we have the skill sets, if we have the experience in here in whatever field that we do, we can always prepare. And when the time is right, and when peace is finally restored in Tigray, we can use our skill sets and experiences in helping in the rebuilding efforts. So in two ways we can help. One, invest. You can invest as a private business. You can buy shares and create more job opportunities. And you can also use your skill sets to either go back home and volunteer and educate other people, or you can use your skill sets and resources and experience to start new businesses. And it could be in transportation, it could be in agro processing, it could be in the medical field, it could be in farming, it could be in small scale businesses, it could be in consulting, it could be in training centers. So there are tons and tons of things that we can do if we have the willingness. But that's up to us. That's up to us, and if we have the motivation, and if we can replicate the diplomatic pressure we have created here in the diaspora, also in the rebuilding effort, I think in no time we'll be able to rebuild Tigray and make it a prosperous region or country. I guess that's all I want to say. If you have any questions later, but so that you know, today I am only here in the capacity of an entrepreneur and an investor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Solomon. I just wanted to add one more thing, that if you guys are interested in the aviation sector, Northern Star have they do have a website and a Twitter page. If you want to buy shares, please do get in touch if you need more information. I know that McConan was working on the share buying and promotion about a month ago or so. So thank you. Great. Male, do you want to conclude this section and we move on to the Q&A?
Yes. Thank you, Solomon, and thank you all the speakers. It's been very interesting to hear your thoughts on how to rebuild Tigray in a sustainable way. We hope we will continue such discussions. Thank you. Yeah, my book is done.
Great. Thank you, Mele. Salamite, if you could raise your hands. I think I switched it off maybe. Let me just, we have, okay, sorry. I just turned it off, so open to everyone. So our Q&A sessions are open. Salam, if you could come up. Great. Wonderful. I think we have a couple of questions sent on the back channel. If you guys do have any questions for our esteemed guest, please do ask your question. If you could go back to control the situation. We don't have a lot of people on the stage. That would be great. But yeah, I think the first question is from Abu Kafan, or would you like to come up? I think he has a question for Dr. Waini.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. We have Abu Abu Kafan, I think. Go ahead. Okay. Just give me a second. Would you like me to read out the question, or would you like to come up? All right, Dr. Rainey, I think I'll just read out the question. So the question was, can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
The question says, in Tigray and our association, we have established a team that can prepare project proposals and search for grants. To be able to do that, we need datas. I have heard you mention datas. How can we get them? Is there any study made on current crises you can suggest us so that we can use as a reference? That's a question for you, Dr. Wayne.
Oh, yes. I think Abu might have heard me say HBN for Tigray received a needs assessment data back in February from the Tigray Health Bureau that shows the overall picture pre-war and what has happened until February, how the health systems were impacted. But there is actually even a published article. It just got published, Abu, if you haven't seen it, at the British Medical Journal Global Health. The first author is Haile Gassassou, and then it was published here on November 8th. It tells a lot of details about the impact of war on health system of the Tigray region in Ethiopia. They call it an assessment. In fact, they included the needs assessment data that we have as a precondition, as a pre-war data. And then they added a lot of details in which there was assessment of the functionality of the health services done in June, partially functioning, fully functioning, or inaccessible health services. I based my presentation today on them for the post-war data. And there is information about the impact of the gender and sexual violence that has impacted the entire region. There is a lot about that. And other than that, I think this is the recent publication I know, but you can contact me through through my Twitter or anything, and then we can go through this about other publications, even though they are not published. The news from media, they provide a wealth of information on how the Tigray health system has been affected. Yeah, and that's what comes to my mind now.
I've just put it for anyone who's interested, sorry. So you can access it on Twitter, and I've tagged TDR Media and UMD, TDR Fund and UMD, sorry. So you can access the study that Dr. Wayne is referencing.
Yes, thank you, Hannes. Thanks.
And a quick reminder for everyone that if you do have questions in the future, just please follow our guests on their social media, or you can back channel them on Clubhouse, Twitter. I'm sure they have it attached. I think Dr. Rainey, your Twitter is attached on your Clubhouse. So please do that, and you can follow up with that as well.
I have one question that came to me.
Go ahead, Havin.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. For all of the presenters, today's presenters, not sure if you guys have used any kind of slides or presentations, but is there a way we can maybe combine them and place them somewhere where people can share it?
I personally don't have presentations or slides. It's just At HPN for Tigray, we have a health policy subcommittee, which I lead. I co-lead along with my colleagues. And these are the things that we discuss every day. We have been discussing for a long time about the impact of war and how to rehabilitate, because the health policy subcommittee is a research and development group. We review the literature to learn from countries that have went through a similar situation, that were affected by war, and in which their health system was affected. And we discussed to recommend in the future how the health system integration should look like, how best it can be rehabilitated based on the literature, of course, or experience. So I just put bullet points in one page, what to talk about them. But I honestly don't have slides about this, but I can prepare in the future if you need some.
I think on that point, if you want to stay updated, I know HPN has a MailChimp newsletter that you can subscribe to. I'll post a link on Twitter. And also I think Omna Tigray produces monthly situational reports on Tigray on their website. So I think those are two sources of data that you can use, as close to primary data as we have in terms of what you can use to stay updated. I think those are two sources that can be helpful in the absence of slides from today's presentations.
Absolutely. You may send information, an email to info@hpn4tigray.org. And I think they will take you from there, or tag me in any way and send me information, and then we can connect you. Any one of us will be able to do this. Thank you. Johannes gave you the clear information. I think a good information that we have a newsletter actually. So one of it was released yesterday, the latest.
I think I didn't have slides. It was mostly from just bullet points that I have on my notes. But I personally am following the story and publishing small piece by piece. For example, I had a small article that came out on Human Geography Journal recently. It was about the famine, how they managed to create famine, and there was also an article on Tighat. Analysis article on the environmental impact of the war. But there is also an ongoing work that I'm trying to do on the broader implication of the war and how Tigray should come out of this. So you can contact me on Twitter and I can provide more information.
That's wonderful. So for those of you that do have further questions, please follow our speakers on their social media. And now I'll give, does that answer your question? So I could just take you down to the audience, just so I know that who needs to go next. Is that okay? Great, I'll just take that as okay. Tech questions?
Yeah, thanks, Salamina. If I could kind of advertise and start from the last point that Tigray mentioned, I will have a discussion with him about the paper he wrote on famine tomorrow on Tigray Forum. So you have that to look forward to for tomorrow. But my question, I joined this room a bit late, so maybe I will be repeating some of the points that one or more of you would have raised. Do we have an assessment of the amount of damage that has been inflicted in Tigray in terms of the infrastructure and in terms of other things that you guys are saying we should rebuild? Do you have kind of a rough understanding of how much damage has been inflicted and how much rebuilding we would need to do? So that's my first question. If you have an assessment, because I think one of the things that happened when the war started was the communication was totally cut off, and we, at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally in the dark as to what might have happened in Tigray. And my second question is is there any precedent for that kind of damage? And do we need something that looks like, maybe I should use the blasphemous term now, kind of a Marshall plan to rebuild Tigray? And how do you think we would orchestrate such kind of plan, and what are the things that we need in terms of organization and planning. Thank you.
I'm happy to take a stab at this if no one else wants to answer. But so I think in terms of your first question, in terms of assessment for what's happening on the ground, it's very difficult to assess. But I think in my experience, two teams that I worked with, namely Omna and HPN, as I said, do produce sort of very timely information that does come from on the ground sources, and also GSTS. So I think I would say they're probably our best attempts at, on the ground information. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think anyone has taken a step back and done a more comprehensive assessment of, all of the damage. But I think on that point, I would just say, it's very clear the damage is very, very extensive. And I think, in the absence of details, I think it's very extensive. But if I just leave it to the speakers first to respond, and if there's anything I can add on top of that, happy to do so. Anyone else to jump in?
I can go. I can, to some extent, respond to text, or maybe pose even more questions in addition to the text question. I was also really. I'm following the story and trying to document how much damage Tigray has incurred from the war, and so far the scale of the destruction we can only see is from the reports, the news reports, and very limited reports when the PP administration was in Mekelle. So since then we don't have so much coming out of Tigray. And I'm actually trying to get in contact with people in Mekelle, in Tigray, to see if they are doing anything related to assessment. But I also keep hearing that there is an ongoing assessment going on in terms of sort of making a rough estimate of how much damage, the scale of damage that happened in Tigray on all sectors. As to the Marshall Plan, and of course, before I forget on that, I think we also need to, as part of this rebuilding plans for rebuilding of Tigray, we need to also demand that the Tigray government, the current administration, makes this kind of assessment if they are not already up to it. When it comes to the second, the Marshall Plan question, I think that is, we're not expecting a Marshall Plan like in the 1945, 1946 kind of Marshall Plan that took place in Europe. So we're not expecting someone else to come and support us. But in the event, we're talking about what we would do if something like that happens. Do we just accept whatever is provided, whatever conditions are provided? In terms of how we want to rebuild today, do we think about different ways of doing things than what is provided by the donors, by the people who want us to rebuild our Tigray? So in that sense, we need to discuss what kind of Tigray we want to build, what kind of society we want to build. So that's what this event is for me. It's an event where we discuss about what happens when we have the possibility of rebuilding Tigray, what kind of strategies to follow. So in my case, from my point of view, we are thinking about building a sustainable, not in the sense of the UN's sustainable development goals, but sustainable in a very different way, in a way that we are building a region sort of from scratch, because it has been destroyed, but it has to also take into consideration lots of the context where Tigray is, and that's, I think, what I would say. I don't know if I have made any sense in that.
Yeah. But if I could, Salamina, can I add a follow-up question to that?
Yes, Tech. Make it quick. Sorry,
yeah, but maybe I'm kind of thinking at a very abstract level, and maybe this wouldn't be to the liking of more of the people here. But do you think that the plan that we need to prepare for Tigray should be kind of agnostic to the kind of relationship that Tigray might have with Ethiopia, or it should be conditioned on what kind of relationship Tigray will have with Ethiopia, the rebuilding process?
I think from my point of view, I think it's regardless of how we relate to Ethiopia. I think we need to think about Tigray as on its own, regardless of how we will relate with the larger Ethiopia, or if that continues, of course. So when we talk about rebuilding, we can't expect, for example, someone was also mentioning earlier, we can't expect the central authorities, even if we continue with it, we can't expect central authorities to do reparation work, do favorable work for us. So we have to think in a different way. We have to think for our own. That's what I'm trying to get in.
If I may, on this point, so I think it's very important on how we do it. So the most important factor for me is, again, diversity of solutions, approaches, finances, sources, all that. Because a big Marshall Plan might come with the temptation of doing it, only one way, and do it big and fast, which would be a disaster from sustainability perspective. I'm not talking about environmental only, social, economic, all that. So we need first to understand, I think, the ramifications of all the damage. I have a figure in front of me that, as you might remember, June 28 was the day Abiy Ahmed was kicked out of Tigray. But July 1st was his plan to start what he called Tigray Emergency Recovery Plan. So I'm sitting on a document which is 95 pages, and it was submitted by the federal government to donors. And over 24 months, they were planning, or they were asking for US dollar 721 million. So they have listed, all kinds of damage, all that, and so on. So this, I would say, is what they assessed by June 28 this year. So the diversity would, as I mentioned in my presentation, in terms of the small scales, the local solutions, all that, and it needs time. I know, I'm for better and faster, but when we do faster, I think we might end up big projects like we have right now in Takaze, which is a federal project, by the way. But even at the regional level, I think going big would be very bad for Tigray. So it should be smart, small, and the diversity of financing that kind of project would come in different shapes and colors. And I think that's what we should do in terms of rebuilding it better and sustainably. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful, Dr. Getachew. I would like to bring in Salamawit, because she's an expert on the topic. Let's just see the woman perspective of these things. So go ahead, please, Salam.
I was actually gonna let Naum go next, but I think one of the several key points that came up during the discussion with our experts are particularly when it comes to talking about the diaspora and what the diaspora can do, as well as, of course, what exists right now. What did Tigray have and what is happening right now, and we don't really know to what extent the damage is done. At least to a full extent, we don't have the data because of the blackout. So therefore, right now, at least we're working with what we have. So what can the diaspora do in terms of preparing to rebuild, or just looking at the development and in general, and sustainability is one of the questions I think that came up. And I think one of the key statements by Dr. Ermias, he mentioned amongst everybody, I think also Dr. Getachew in his intro talked about how everything has to be looked at holistically, almost looking at, I think also Malay mentioned looking at systems thinking was what was used. So looking at everything, every sector, and identifying the challenges from a bottom up is the right thing to do, but looking at what exists and see how, from a diaspora perspective, how whether it's business, whether it's agriculture, whether it's health, to what extent and how can the diaspora help? These are some of the things that were discussed. I think that looking at what TDRF is doing right now today. And going forward, hopefully this is going to be sort of a starting point of a discussion to see even how should it be approached amongst the questions that everybody is asking. I think that's one of the main takeaways in here, is that this is the beginning of the conversation of to talk about sustainability, to talk about development, to talk about anything when it comes to rebuilding and helping the people in Tigray. So that's one of the main things in general, the takeaway that we took today. I'll stop here and we'll give, I think Noam was next. And if any of you, if you are down with questions, you can just, go back to the audience if you can. And also, let's just make sure that whatever question we have, it's completely focused towards sustainability and development as much as possible, so that we don't take the conversation to a different direction. So everybody's been doing great. Thank you so much.
So Nahom, you can go next, and then Rahil, and then Addis, I think. And then you can go.
Okay, thank you, Salamina and Salamite. I greatly enjoyed the discussions today. Appreciate everybody who came in and contributed. I'm going to switch gears and talk about the energy issue that we might be facing that's in the horizon in Tigray. I mean, we heard recently they bombed the Tegaru dam, which is one of the biggest contributors to Tigray and its population when it comes to electricity. And one of the people that were speaking were talking about how their business depended greatly on their on this power issue. My question is to everybody. This is just a general open discussion. Have we thought about solar power in terms of? I understand, back in the day on Tigray TV and all, we used to be able to see people in the outskirts really using solar and trying to get some sort of a bulb of light in their homes that are very in the outskirts of Tigray. That's as far as I know. But recently there has been a lot of big strides in terms of Facebook and Google trying to be, even Amazon trying to be 100% electric-based companies, right? Even Tesla, there's been big strides to the point that we can build big spaces, big homes, and big industries around electricity by using solar. Has there been any type of work done on this area? And I want you guys to also think about the decentralization of energy, meaning what's happening right now is we have one big source of power. Whenever that's hit, there's no light all over Tigray, right? But with the decentralization of energy, meaning each home having a solar panel and being able to produce its own energy, we can in the future easily avoid these type of targeted attacks. Does anyone know about any type of solar projects in Tigray? Thank you.
Maybe not on specific, physical projects, but actually the GSTS.
He's on the phone.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Please,
yes, sorry. It was a voicemail. Yeah. So the GSTS, the Global Society of Tegaru Professionals and Scholars, has been actively engaged in before the war and more so after the war in terms of the issues of energy supply and the issue of decentralization. So the groups that are working on that within GSTS are looking at what are the options, where, when, all that, because as you can imagine, there is a merit of having this solar, wind, but more so when you can bring them together in an integrated fashion so that you have always supply of energy. So there is an issue of scale. Maybe having at each on each roof wouldn't be what we should go for. We should go for a scale that is small enough to be, protected from the attacks you mentioned and from other kinds of vulnerabilities, but also big enough to serve a community and where you can activate local economic growth, local job creation. And so I know cases in other African countries like Burkina Faso, where my university has been active in terms of giving a community level solar energy with the goal of not only supplying households with the minimum energy for food storage, lighting and charging, all that, but also enough for having, let's say, a local agro processor, very small local agro processor that can add values to agricultural produce and so on. So that's the kind of direction I see we would be going in Tigray. But again, it should be matched with population density, where our people are, what is the economy of scale, a number of factors. What I mentioned in my initial talk was we should be careful in going for, solar power small gadgets and distribution of them into the rural areas. If they go wrong, they might end up in our water bodies, in our agricultural farms, and they have, carcinogenic and other health wise problematic components, heavy metals, to mention a few. Thank you.
If I maybe add from the maybe venture capital space, which is maybe a slightly different point from what Professor Getachew raised. I know in Africa there's a lot of activity in the space of decentralized energy and a lot of innovation and R&D being put towards exactly what you said around decentralization on top of efforts such as Facebook, Tesla, and so on. So I think potentially when things open up, there's an opportunity to leverage that capital from programs such as, for example, I know Power Africa has a huge scheme on this at an Africa level. So maybe there potentially is an element of looping that into the more community level, bottom-up approaches that Professor Getachew mentioned, and having a happy medium where we're also bearing in mind sort of the sustainability elements, and we're not, not contributing towards a negative environmental effects, as you mentioned. So I don't know if that's also helpful from a slightly step back Africa venture capitalist, more sort of big money perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And the reason I just bring these things up is I understand it's one of the greatest catastrophes that have ever befallen our people. But when I see people in Kenya, they no longer use paper cash. No longer, they're using their phones to pay for items in stores. When they go to Souk Gala, they pay with their telephone texting systems. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, and why not we can do it? You know what I mean? So just looking for opportunities to put in a new system into Tigray that can actually fasten our progress towards a far brighter Tigray for the future. But thank you all. Appreciate you. Can I add? Yep. Okay.
Who wants to go?
Yeah, I can add a little bit more on the decentralization. I wasn't clear when I presented the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and how we have to rethink as a region, and how we have to rethink about like our situation, that we are in a volatile region, and war is often inevitable in that kind of context, and how we have to build a system that is robust enough to survive war and to survive to withstand the effects of war. And so far, the system that has been in place was in Ethiopia and in Tigray was centralized, was like in terms of, for example, industrial investment, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of like telecom and power and all of that. So I think there is a need to break away from that kind of system to a system that can withstand war and disaster like this. And that is, for example, through decentralization. For example, investing in small scale industries, small scale infrastructures that are localized, which can survive this kind of effect. I think that makes sense when we invest in energy as well, as we can see it, like the bombing that Tegaru dam was enough to put Tigray in the dark. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe if I can add from another money perspective. I guess if we have time, that is.
We are really running out of time, but I do have a few questions that are back channeled. So Naomi, you're done with your question?
Yes, ma'am. You can kick me out.
Amazing. I'm not going to kick you out, but you can remove yourself to the audience.
Hi, Salamina. Yeah, this is Haben Tigray.
Yes, you think you wanted to say a bit more on TDR funds?
Yeah. Initially, when you give the chance, he wasn't speaking. So I just wanted to say a few words about Haben Tigray Relief and Development Association. For those of you who don't know it, it's newly established as of the beginning of the war. Established non-profit charity organization to support the people of Tigray impacted by the war. It is a 501c3 tax-exempt, IRS-recognized association. More information is available at haventigray.org, our website. Interestingly, I was reading our vision today from our website, and it says, we envision a day when the people of Tigray have lasting, sustainable peace to start long struggle against poverty and illiteracy. So it just speaks to our topic today, which is sustainability. So we believe sustainable peace is also maybe at the core of everything. If I may briefly say a few things that we've done. We have 3 purposes: to immediate basic aid to the people of Tigray impacted by the war, which are including immediate food, medical, and other aids. And we did a few of those before June, supporting hundreds of IDP families in Makala and Shira by coordinating with our members in the University of Makala University. Our other purpose, our mission is to reestablish families once they return to their homes. So when it comes to sustainability, the immediate operation, we may not be able to do a lot in terms of sustainability as we are trying to respond quickly, but short-term projects to reestablish families would definitely use sustainability considerations. Our third and last purpose that we identified is provide assistance to everyone in a larger scheme of economic development and alleviation. And under this, we envision to do long-term programs. So sustainability should definitely be a big part of these large programs. Briefly, the strategic planning team of our association has identified, after like weeks of brainstorming, 15 numerous programs. a lot of ideas, a lot of projects, but we wanted to focus on 3 of them: agriculture and food security.
Haben, I would have to kind of interrupt you because we're really running out of time.
All right. Thank you. Okay, thank you, TDRF, for organizing this, and we look forward to working with everyone on this. Thank you.
Brilliant. So if anyone has a question, please follow Haben, and you can take it from there. I understand I do have a few questions on the back channel. So let me read the questions quickly, and the panelists can answer. And then Meherat, you do have something to say, Addis, and a few other people. So let's make this as brief as possible.
And Salamina, we have also a few people waiting on the list to come up. So if people are done with their questions, they can go down.
Yeah, okay. Let me just. Who do we have first? Maybe perhaps I think Addis and Rahib were waiting for a while, and then Muse. You guys go ahead briefly, like as quick as possible. If you could. Rahim's the entertainment. Never mind. Addis.
Thank you, Salamina, and thank you, TDRA, for convening this meeting. Apologies for joining late. I had a prior meeting, and I assume, given the caliber of those of you in the high table, the presentation was great. And on the assessment, of course, during the assessment done by the interim administration, but the assessment have its own defects, and after the assessments were made, so many developments have happened, including the Western Tigray, where the part of Tigray where relatively better capital accommodation was achieved is still under the occupation of the Amhara, the Eritrean and Ethiopian forces, and most of the resources are either destroyed or looted. That needs to be taken into account, and on that regard, though it is commendable to have a general assessment, but the Tigray government has established an office. I think most of you are aware, the Tigray War Damage Office in Tigrinya. It is ጉዳት ኩናት ቤት ጽሕፈት, but literally it is the Tigray War Damage Office, and they have 2 working groups. One is on the economic damage assessment, and so the second aspect is on the human rights violations assessment. I am informed that both of the teams are working in estimating the human rights damage and the economic damage, and let us hope they will finalize their work, and it will be helpful for all of us, and especially for TDRF, that you are working on this area. And on the sustainability, of course, there is the need to the fact that we are rebuilding. It gives us the opportunity to rebuild back better and resilient by integrating the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environment in an integrated manner. On the initiatives, I think I know most of them have touched upon, but my understanding is, of course, the government of Tigray is working on plans how to rebuild back better, but initiatives like this are going to at least to set the tone. And when the discussions comes, you guys will be in a better position to contribute better in those initiatives. And maybe to preempt some of, I am not a moderator, but Tech has raised an excellent question. How is the rebuilding going to take place? Is it in the framework of Ethiopia or an independent Tigray? But given the urgency, and even in the referendum process and in the independence processes, I assume if it is going to be the constitutional framework, it is at least going to take 3 to 4 years transitional arrangement, and given the urgency of the rebuilding process, I think as soon as Tigray is liberated from the enemy forces, the rebuilding process will go simultaneously with the legal framework process of an independence Tigray, and I think it will be a simultaneous process. Given we are going to have additional opportunities to discuss on the specifics, let me focus on those macro issues, and I will contribute in further discussions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Adis. If we could go to Muse, and then we can just include Muse, your questions, and then they will answer it all together, whatever input they may have.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you guys. I have 3 brief questions and maybe suggestions as well. The first one is about how is our collaboration would look like with the scholars and people who are back home, our brothers and sisters who are involved, who are facing the whole thing at first hand. So how is the relationship like, and what are we thinking about in building that bridge between us as a community outside and them? This includes the university teachers, and others as well. The second one is with talking about sustainability and consistence, how is the plan to get that brain gain that all of us who are Westerns or outside, that we can put that into our country, back, and how are we going that accountability issue, whether it's going to be consistent, because we're talking about sustainability, and are we going to, there going to be a system where we can hold ourselves accountable for not being consistent with our action and with our engagements? And the third one is, are there any thoughts on proposals or on bringing organizations, be it profitable or non-profit, especially private, where we propose and be able to to take that to and put it in work in Tigray, and how does that look like, and is it given it that much thought, especially with private sector, where we be able to control, especially be it in the mining sector, for example, where we could actually be the first one, sole owners of the mining, where we don't have to rely on the Western companies, but we can get their technology and their expertise at the same time. How are we thinking about those things, especially utilizing what we could actually gain, and also non-profit organizations where we could people could propose projects and maybe put that forward into Tigray. And I can mention one organization that was established in 2000, a Million Village Project, was proposed by Professor Awash, a Colombian professor. He's from Tigray, and I know for sure that how it was very influential and how it changed, millions of people's life, be it financially and also, health-wise, and agriculture-wise. So those are my 3 questions. I hope I make myself clear. Thank you.
Those were really good questions. So if any of the panelists want to take on, Mehrat?
Yes,
go ahead.
I would, sorry, Vasia, I would like just to add something before I come to one or two of your questions, but they might answer also some of them. When it comes to, I think rebuilding Tigray and post-war, we don't know how long it will take. And one thing I think we should do is, in my opinion, is if you want to be involved, is like come up with a emergency response plan, like when it comes to nutrition, for example, we set up a GSTS group who are we creating a different content and different flyers and leaflets and documentation, which we will hopefully also communicate with the Bureau of Agriculture, for example, or we come up with ideas. So, or I'm also part of another group which we are also focusing on already like looking for food availability, looking also around in Makala who can actually support us with making baby foods for emergency purposes. At the same time, also see how we can also employ those women until everything is over. So I think if we want to contribute, we don't have to wait until post-war. This is really a good opportunity to come together, but and it was a pleasure. But it would be also amazing if we could continue to have this kind of platforms on Clubhouse, especially, or we can discuss, even go deeper into different emergency response plans. This is my opinion, and anyone who would like to join can also contact me, especially when in the food sector, food preservation, and so on. So, but even like for each sector, I think the most important part is we talk about nutrition, health, and everything, but this is everything is very interlinked, and if we don't have healthy people who with energy, I mean, it's really difficult to rebuild something. So from my side, I can always say, like, let's check to see how we can stay steady, see how we can help, what kind of emergency, like food, medicine, we can already get, like the funding is doing together, and so on. So this is one thing I would like to add to what I was talking about. Thank you, Salam, for giving me this chance.
I may add, if we have time, I may add a few points related to what Musei raised. Do we have time, Salamina? 2 minutes?
Not really, but I mean, if you're going to make it quick, because we have more questions that Salam is going to ask via the back channel. So
just really one. So I think in terms of engaging the diaspora, I think leveraging best practice from international other, countries is very helpful. 2 examples I would raise would be Israel and Pakistan. I think both of them have managed to build a very thriving startup ecosystem, and there's lots of these venture capital funding that's flowing into those countries. And I think they're both good examples of how to engage the diaspora. And I think in terms of what companies are being engaged, internationally, big companies are being engaged. I think one example would be Facebook match funding, or Meta rather, match funding Giving Tuesday Today across, I think, both TDR and HPN and other organizations. I think those are 2 concrete examples I would say raised related to your questions.
Great. Salam, you can go ahead.
Sure. I think this might be also a question for Dr. Waini, since she mentioned, or everybody else can answer it. You mentioned about mental health and well-being. So one of the questions is, so how do we create a sustainable safety and to protect Tigrayans and Tigray from all kind of violence in order to achieve this goal? Basically, how can we diasporas start to already build a sustainable peace? Is a question. I think part of it is health, part of it is, I think it could be general. So whoever wants to take on that question.
So in my opinion, the diaspora can learn from previous experiences. There is a wealth of research done in other countries, how they handle post-war health outcomes. When it comes to, and then we can start getting ready with research and intervention programs. The intervention programs that we would like to implement later during the during the response period and after that will depend on the problems that we are identifying in the situation. Someone said earlier, I'm not good in names. We bring the solution services, but depending on the population at need. So the healthcare in Tigray is not going to be the same as the past. We have new emerging issues, a huge number of women victims of sexual and gender violence that will need continuous mental health care, counseling. Mental health is like, it's a malignant form of the unseen, something that you can't open and remove, unlike other space-occupying lesions in the brain. This one will need a continuous care in multiple ways. Professionals should come and make. We have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have mental health professionals of all levels that will develop a kind of a standard for this to take care of this. It should be implemented maybe at a health post level, which could be accessible. That makes it accessible for every woman, despite their socioeconomic factors, distance, rural, or this problem has affected rural and urban situation equally. And that needs to be, and we have many other things. This woman might have also children, unwanted pregnancy because of the sexual violence. And those children they should be reassured that they belong to Tigray. They are the children of Tigray. And there should be either orphanage or someone in social services that should really be sharing the burden of these mothers, raising these children as children of Tigray. Somebody said recently that whatever they carry, even if it was unwanted, those children are precious. They are going to carry the genes of Tegaru, and we need to raise those children, which will be hundreds or thousands, as loved, protected, adored like any other child. So these are the areas that we will have emerging issues based on for casualties, mental health, children. We have new emerging issues. We also have the existing health problems that we failed to control because of the collapsed health system that already existed. Infectious diseases, now there will be an outbreak, like a pandemic, they will be increasing. Not an outbreak like the COVID, but increased number. Tuberculosis will come back to the future as new because of the interruption of treatments. But one example is at HPN for Tigray, we have a mental health group, very talented group. It's one of the groups, a subcommittee. They develop curriculum and some training materials for us internally, free on Twitter. They advertise it for others affected, for the diaspora. And one of the methods they used is to use their methods in assessing and in evaluating and providing care for the refugees in Sudan. Since we didn't have access to Tigray, they found out, we have about 80,000 refugees, maybe it's an underestimation, in 3 camps in Sudan. And one of the things is because they evaluated and they assessed the system there, that's when they convinced us, the board, to allocate some resources to build the wellness and education center, which will be used as a primary care, as a counseling center, and also as an education center for the children, to protect the children from unwanted exposure to many other things, drug exposure or any other crimes. They needed to be, those kind of. So this is my take. We will need a comprehensive plan. Academicians, clinicians, researchers, and policymakers should come together to design the health system based on the emerging issues in Tigray. I'm done. Thank you, Malay. Was that Malay?
No, that was Salam.
Okay, Salam. Yeah, thank you. I'm done.
Not Salamina, just Salam.
Oh, well. Thank you. May I speak?
Was that Rahel? Yes. Go ahead, my love. Sorry. It's okay. Earlier I wanted to speak, but it's just my internet was not working. So, and then I showed up late, so I want to apologize. But was it Dr. Rainey that spoke before me? Yes. Okay, so thank you. I was actually happy that you spoke before me because I was writing down. My mind was all over the place. So it's hard, especially for me. Maybe a lot of people share the same feeling, but it's hard for me, for example, to sit here and say we should do this, we should do that for Tigray in terms of like hydropower and like building factories and such. But last year at this time I was in Maqala, and then I stayed there 3 months after the war, and I came back here. So I've seen partial of what was happening in Tigray. So me being here after I came back, because I was so traumatized, I was closely working with the doctors at that moment, and there were a lot of like rape victims that were like coming from Shara, Adwa, and Shararu, Humara, and they actually walked all the way. They came on foot to Maqada. And some of them, they were able to get help, and some of them needed abortion, and some of them couldn't get abortion. Maybe it was too late for them. And there was no medication. So I'm sure some of you I have asked you to donate for Valentine's for Tegaru, because we had to send money for like the rape victims, and then also for mothers who were expecting at that moment. So for me, like at this point in time, sitting here, the only thing I can think of is, first Tigray has to be free of, entirely be free of the enemy. And then after that, the first thing I think we should do is like help the kids that are traumatized, and also like provide help for mothers and other like people who need psychological help, because I'm sure they went through a lot of like trauma and anxiety. But I want people to remember that Eritrean soldiers and even the Amhara militia and anybody that was there, they raped women, and we need to send medical supplies, that being like even testing kits that we have to send. And because we have to make sure that if they need treatment, the treatment gets there, on time. That way we can save our people. And also, I know Dr. Wayne was saying how we have to accept the kids, even if the mother was raped. Those are Tigrayan children, and we have to love them. And thank you so much, because we did a fundraiser event, like I think it was during March of last year, like right after I came back. And then we were saying that we're going to send it to this woman. And I've seen a couple of people who I would think they would be wise enough. They're educated people, and they were saying, no, we should not accept those kids. Those kids should not be, brought to this world. And that was really sad for me to hear. So I want us to work on educating our people. We can work on. I know that when I was in Maqala, we used to post every single day on Facebook, and there was this guy from Zalambesa. Every single day, every single morning, he always say we have to build Takaza number 2 and number 3, so we can be we can provide a lot of power to Tigray and stuff like that. So we can do all that. But first thing is first, we have to care for our people mentally, and then also physically, emotionally, and definitely we have to be acceptant of like the kids that are going to be born. At the end of the day, it's how we raise them. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is also my belief. So I was happy to hear you say those things. We have to work on our people in the way they think, those kids, their mothers are Tigrayans, and then we can like raise them properly, and we should love them and show them all the care that they deserve. That's what I want to say. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rahel. That was a wonderful. You've back-channeled me your questions, but TDR Funds have promised that they will hold another session with UMD, so we will continue. So we will get back to your questions in the next round. It's just a bit too much to go around all of them, and we are running out of time. I think most of you are in Eastern time, but I'm on GMT time as well. So we have to kind of look the time. We do have lots going on. We have covered most of the questions, but we still have a lot to go. Yes, Salam, do you want to?
Should we allow maybe the three individuals go, and then we can wrap up, or?
Yeah, we have entertainment and auction on our next. Isn't that right, Asafa? You still with us?
And I was thinking more of I think it's Filderosa.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. Let's just do that.
We can
Guan and Filderosa, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. I'm here.
I think it's Field of Roses. Okay, Field of Roses. All right. Okay.
Hi, thank you. I sent you the questions, but I'll say them on here. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on permaculture and rain harvesting to kind of go along with the community and personal gardening. And then my second question was, have you thought about implementation of hemp building materials?
I think you were breaking up for me. I didn't hear the questions correctly.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my question was about implementation of permaculture and kind of help with the community and individual gardening. Thoughts on that, and also thoughts on using hemp building materials to build sustainable housing.
I can maybe take the hemp question. I think I am not sure if Tigray grows or if there is any previous experience with hemp. But if that can be done, I mean, I can see it to be a resource in terms of biorefinery, if you will. So for not only construction, but for manufacturing in terms of biomaterials, biocomposites, and even food. But I think the Ethiopian or Tigrayan regulatory framework should allow that, because as you know, for example, in Canada, where I am, we do use a lot of hemp for manufacturing and for construction. I mean, at small scale, so to speak, because it's not big commercial scales yet. But there are states in the US that ban the use of hemp for the obvious reason of that very, very small drug content and so on. So I don't know if there is an existing even hemp plant and if it's allowable, but that's why the design of sustainable Tigray should also look into what are the enabling policies and structures, the how you feed in from research to the industry for commercialization, and what are the incentives that the government or the public sector can provide to facilitate that connection and so on. So I'm a big fan of hemp, and I did a bit of research on that. But my experience when I was talking to people who knew about plants in Ethiopia and so on, that was not a positive feedback I received in terms of the regulatory aspect of that. Thank you.
you. Getachew, can I send you a link to a cigarette that actually works in the hemp concrete industry?
Please. Yes, actually, my research was on cement combining with hemp, and I did a sustainability, if you will, assessment of that for a developer, a product developer in Alberta, Canada. So I would be interested in that.
Thank you so much.
May I speak, please?
Who is that? Sorry.
It's me, Mnet, please.
Oh, okay. If you could just quickly.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I will be very brief.
Okay, go ahead.
I would love to reflect on two things. And the first one is the collaboration. Of course, the two things I would want to reflect are also interrelated to one another and good enough to discuss on this first session, which we trust will continue. And the one I want to start with is the collaboration between or maybe how could the diaspora collaborate with the people and how we could be involved. I think this may vary from sector to sector, but then again, it depends on, very largely depends on the assessment and what assessments are we going to have. And with this, again, I still have Taklai speaking in my mind when he said, do we have the data on the damage assessment inflicted? How much is damaged and all that, you know? So maybe I was not speaking clear enough, talking a lot, but not detailed enough. I mentioned one of the barriers I mentioned was the data availability. If we have to speak about the future, what we have to work on, and what has happened and what we have to do, then we need the empirical evidence to look at what we have and what is missing so that we fill it in. And so we don't have that. And that's the first thing that has to come. And not only now, but it's one of the major gaps we have in Tigray. We are poor in keeping database. And of course, there are some attempts, and the attempts in documentation we have at Tigray, attempts we have on that we are also doing here, and that other groups like Omna Tigray and many other initiatives are doing is also good, but not enough. And it only indicates what has happened, and that type of damage has happened. But we don't know to what extent this damage is. For instance, I might have written some articles on the impacts on agriculture, like what my brother Taklahaman have done, but it does not clearly show the extent of the damage. The same is true for the health and each and every sector. So then the damage assessment needs to come first before we think of the options. We may suggest a lot, but of course those are the things to be done. But we don't know the level of damage at first, which always have to come first, and then. Taklai also and Addis also literally mentioned also the framework in which we have to think of the reconstruction, which is again another puzzle which remains uncertain to me. And I will not go in detail, but because the future is still uncertain.
Unknown caller.
So then, but once we do the assessment, then we could go, once we identify the resource we have in Tigray and the gaps we have and the resource we have outside, and then what we can contribute it, how we can bring it into Tigray. It could be in the form of fundraising, contributing financially or technically, or maybe are we going to write grants project?
Unknown caller.
Try to come with technical support from the international community, the financial support, and also lasting partnerships and all that. But again, Taklai's points comes again. We need the assessment before everything and anything else, so that we could look into the way forward together with the uncertainties. And I still have to appreciate that we have this kind of session to entertain, and it has to continue like that. Thank you everyone for being part of it.
Thank you, Dr. Emnet. You definitely took your time. I think we are concluding on the Q&A. Unfortunately, I know we have lots of questions to go, but we are have the auction and entertain your questions. And I've also attached the YouTube link for UMD, which is live. Do have more questions to our panelists. Do follow them on their social media. You can direct message them, back channel them. And then I will pass it on to Rahel, who's going to follow up with our entertainment, no?
Yeah, I think, is it Asafa or Rahel?
Yes, I'm here. Rahel is around too.
Yes,
I am right here. And I know Johannes was very excited to host this entertainment situation as well.
By all means, please go ahead.
Yeah, he's going to sing for us.
What? I don't know about singing, but I'm happy to be of service. Although it is quite late in the UK, so I'm not sure how long I could be around, but definitely anything for Tigray, I guess.
Yes, that's the spirit. So, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone that has been here as a participant or just as a listener. Thank you so much. Tigray is proud. I know the Displaced Tegaru Relief Fund organization is an organization that I am proud to know that it exists, because I know wonderful things can be done through organizations like that, through people who are passionate about Tigray, well-rounded, well-educated, and again, passionate about Tigray. So thank you for all that you do. And yes, after this, we have superstar Emmanuel Yemane with us today, and we'll have also Solomon, keyboardist Solomon, and I am here as well, and Johannes and Salamina, and I'm not sure if Getachew is going to stay with us, Donger and Asafa as well, and all of you. We're here to raise funds. It's Giving Tuesday, and we have a couple of things that are going to be auctioned off. So I want to say welcome again and again. Asafa, do you want to say something?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. Before we run off to the entertainment phase of this event, I would like to say on behalf of TDRF, I would like to thank Professor Getachew, the UMD team, for hosting us, and for all the presenters here. I'm not going to name you all. And for our dear hostess here, Dr. Salam, and Johannes, and another Dr. Salam, who is also was managing the Q&A, and our moderator, Dr. Mulay Mukannan. Thank you so much. This will definitely continue. Very interesting points, enlightening points discussed. I hope this continues. Thanks so much.
Asafa, I think you confused the Duchess with the doctor, but I'll take that. It's absolutely fine. I think I saw.
Wendy, did you want to say something? And I will say, well, I'll take that too. We'll all take it. But I don't know, Wendy, you had your mic off. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was going to say thank you. And I was very happy to hear a name, Malay. That's the name of my daughter. And it looks like Dr. Malay and I have a lot in common. I also had my graduate school in Norway. So I was very happy to hear her voice. That's nice to meet you all. That's a side note. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rainey.
Thank you so much, everyone. And please, we want to encourage you to start having the conversation. You can actually organize your own group. I know, Noam, I think earlier you raised the question of even a lot of questions that could be explored. So why not have small groups? Why not start talking about sustainability? Why not start talking about rebuilding and development? I understand the circumstances is very different, but we want to encourage you to take this to our next level. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Music on. Where's the DJ?
I'm trying to bring up Danite XX. I just invited you if you can come up. Oh, she's up. Great. Welcome. So who's playing music for us in the entertainment section of this wonderful fundraiser? We do have some auctions coming up, guys. So this is the fun part. Who's playing music? Obviously, there will be an Europe music. That's how we should start this session. Otherwise, I'll remove myself.
All right, DJ Don. All right, Europe it is. Maybe.
You think I'm joking, but I'm not. I would actually leave.
No, I'm not joking.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
Absolutely. I second that.
So we do have the DJ here, right, Asafa?
Yes, he is here. Hi, dear. Welcome,
so you're choosing a song for us?
He's choosing a Europe song.
Awesome.